we'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum. If we can take a look at the agenda, please take a look at the consent agenda. If there are any things that need to be pulled, any adjustments that need to be made, speak up now. Can I get a motion to accept the agenda as printed?
I move.
Thank you. Second? All right, all in favor? Say aye. Aye. Moving on. Governance issues, Ms. Buggs, consent agenda.
All right, Madam Chair, the consent agenda is as follows. 1A, approval of minutes, August 13, 2019, regular meeting. B, recommended approval of supplement number 4 for John Overton High School additions and renovations, TM Partners, PLLC. C, recommended approval of change order number 8 for John Overton High School additions and renovations, American Constructors, Inc. D, awarding of purchases and contracts. D1, AT&T. 2, Basis Policy Research. 3, Ceramic Techniques. 4, Cigna Health and Life Insurance Company. 5, Claim Technologies. 6, iMed Vision Care. 7, Global Payments, Inc., DBA Heartland School Solutions. 8, Institutional Wholesale Co., Inc., with 2 contracts. 9, Lipscomb University. 10, Metis Associates, Inc. 11, Mid-South Bus Center, Inc. 12, Multi-Health Systems, Inc. 13, NCS Pearson, Inc. 14, Riddle Sports. 15, Riverside Assessments, LLC, DBA Riverside Insights. 16, Tennessee Department of Human Services. 17, the Grant Evaluation Group, Inc., DBA The Evaluation Group. 18, the Woodway Fisher Group. 19, University of Pittsburgh, DBA Institute for Learning. 20, Vanderbilt University Medical Center. 21, Waste Management of Tennessee, Inc. 1E, legal settlement claim L-16748 for $16,000. F, legal settlement claim L-16550 for $30,000. G, legal settlement claim L-15939 for $225,000. H, legal settlement claim for $12,000. I, legal settlement claim for $35,000. I present to you the consent agenda as read.
You've heard the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Show of hands, please. It's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Bobo. All right, item number 2 on the consent agenda is Knowledge Academies. We're going to start with our legal counsel. It's going to get us started and give us an update as to where we are, and then we will hear from Dennis Queen, his office. Go ahead. Ms. Harkey.
Good evening, board members. I wanted to update the board on the status of the lawsuit Knowledge Academies has brought. You've been provided a public memo that more fully documents the status of the litigation. When we last met, Knowledge Academies had filed a second motion for contempt, arguing that Mrs. Bush had violated the temporary injunction when she interacted with 2 Knowledge Academies students and a parent at a Knowledge Academies bus stop that happened to be located outside of her place of business. The hearing on that motion was held by the court on August 16th. And the court found that Mrs. Bush was not in contempt of the court's temporary injunction. The court clarified again that board members are not prohibited from communicating with their constituents about the revocation of Knowledge Academies charters. The court also ordered that the revocation process may continue, as the court will not interfere with the board's oversight of charter schools. Knowledge Academies has deposed Ms. Bush and Mr. Queen and has indicated they intend to depose all the board members that were present at the June 11th executive session. Metro has sent written discovery requests to Knowledge Academies. Knowledge Academies objected to most of Metro's requests for documents on the ground that they were requested by Mr. Queen as part of the revocation process. Since the documents have never been provided to Mr. Queen, the issue of whether Knowledge Academies will provide the requested documents as part of the lawsuit will likely have to be resolved by the court. This lawsuit should not be relied upon or factored into whether or not to revoke the Knowledge Academies charter. The decision should be based solely on the criteria set out in law. Thus, I want to provide you a quick overview of the applicable state law. TCA 4913-122C requires written notice to a charter school about the potential for revocation 30 days prior to any action by the board to revoke. MNPS sent the required notice on July 10th of 2019. Now that 30 days has passed, the board is able to consider and fully discuss and decide whether to revoke KA's charter agreements. As there are 3 Knowledge Academy schools, each school must be voted on separately. Here are the criteria for revocation. A public charter agreement may be revoked at any time if the authorizer determines that the school, 1, committed a material violation of any conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter agreement, 2, failed to meet or make sufficient progress towards the performance expectations set forth in the charter agreement, or 3, failed to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. The board should clearly state the reasons for the revocation so that written notice can be provided to the State Department of Education if that is the desire of the board. Additionally, a decision to revoke a charter agreement usually becomes effective at the close of the then current school year. The only exception to this is in the case of fraud, misappropriation of funds, flagrant disregard of the charter agreement, or similar conduct. In that case, the charter school can be closed prior to the end of the 2019-2020 school year. To find fraud, misappropriation of funds, flagrant disregard of the charter agreement, or similar misconduct, you must make very specific findings. I'm happy to discuss the legal definitions of these exceptions if you like. But at this time, I am going to turn it over to Dennis Queen with the Charter Office to present the findings on Knowledge Academies from his office. Following Mr. Queen's presentation, we have provided Knowledge Academies the chance to have 10 minutes to address the board. Then the board may engage in open discussion and take any action as desired.
Are there any questions for Ms. Harkey before she leaves the podium? Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and Director Battle, today's presentation is an executive summary and follow-up to the July 9 and August 13th board meetings, which this office presented information about concerns at Knowledge Academies. You have in your summary review packets the talking points from July 9 and the PowerPoint from July 13, along with other summary information. Our office also provided a binder in the board office in advance of this meeting for your review. It's a more extensive binder. Also presented to the board in advance of today's meeting was an informational portfolio prepared by Knowledge Academies. The slide that you're looking at has a listing of attendance data and enrollment data. When you look at it, this slide provides an update on student enrollment and attendance in all Knowledge Academy schools. It is important to note that each school's projection compared to both enrollments and Infinite Campus on August 22 and the last head count conducted by the Charter Office dated August 27 reflect a net loss of students in all 3 schools. Among the 3 schools, Infinite Campus enrollment shows a net loss of 305 students, while today's head count shows a net loss of 402 students below projections for each school. Staffing numbers were provided by Knowledge Academies earlier today. Our office is working with Human Resources to ensure new hires are reported and cleared to instruct children. What we are looking into around that is, are those teachers actually in classes today teaching? Because the school was interviewing today teachers, and we wanted to delineate between who's actually teaching, and is this including teachers you've hired but yet have to clear to be able to be in the classroom. So we're going to follow up with that. This slide is a review of allegations made from various stakeholders associated with Knowledge Academies. Specifically, I will note that the attorney for Premier Cleaning Company reached out to Knowledge Academies and offered to negotiate a possible payment on the $25,581.77 owed to his company. We received an email on Monday, August 26, this was yesterday, from Premier Cleaning notifying our office of this communication. We are hopeful that the resolution of this debt will occur soon. The Office of Charter Schools believes the following information qualifies for immediate closure of each of the 3 Knowledge Academy schools, should the board decide to do so. We have listed under each of the 3 areas referred to in Tennessee Charter Law those actions or failures that qualify, number 1, as a material violation of the contract, number 2, indicators of poor performance, and number 3, financial mismanagement. So in looking at the slide, committed a material violation on any condition, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter agreement. Knowledge Academy signed a management contract agreement with Noble Education Initiative without communicating this to the LEA. This constitutes a material change in the contract and would require a contract amendment. Number 2, Knowledge Academies failed to provide documentation as requested. We have received small amounts. Most of it was prior to the request, but they failed to provide the 23 items we had requested to us. And we have attempted on 4 occasions to get this information, which has impeded our investigation. Number 3, former CEO Art Fuller failed to abide by governing board policy concerning contracts. Failed to meet or make sufficient progress toward the performance expectations set forth in the charter agreement. The second standard. Number 1, Knowledge High School is identified as an ATSI school. That's additional targeted support and improvement for both 2018 and now 2019, 2 consecutive years. This identification is comparable to being a focus school, which is 1 step below priority. A charter school achieving priority status is closed immediately. Number 2, Knowledge Academy, the middle school identified as a targeted support and improvement, TSI, for 2019. This is comparable, again, to a focus school identification. KA at the Crossings, a middle school, identified as targeted support and improvement, ATSI, for 2018. And that was comparable to being a focus school, 1 step away from priority. Thirdly, failed to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. Staff reported postponed payroll in exchange for bonuses. Parents reported schools failure to provide promised scholarships. Staff reported being underpaid in payroll, stipends, and bonuses, and in some instances not paid. 2 former students reported the school failed to provide warm-ups or refund their $130 cost. Knowledge Academy Board Chair reported the intent to deny payment for legal contracts with vendors. 1 vendor reported the failure to pay negotiated, let me back up. 1 vendor reported the failure to pay, and that's the one I noted. They're negotiating a way to pay that particular cost. We have looked into possible migration contingent upon board action tonight. A plan, should the board vote to close all 3 Knowledge Academy schools. And at this point, I would like to ask Ryan Latimer to come up and share this information with you.
Hey, good evening, board. My part of this will be fairly quick. I'm just going to go over this little slide. Our office was asked to look at what the potential impact to the zoned schools in that area would be should the board vote to close the Knowledge Academies. And this chart shows on kind of the far left, the zone school there. And then the next column looks at the zone students from, and I should say that we only looked at schools that would have 10 or more students coming to them. There's around 46, 48 students that aren't in this analysis that would be spread out over 20 schools across the county. So anyway, that second column is how many students would revert back to their zone school, from a low at John Overton High School of 10 students to a high at Antioch Middle School of 135 students. The next column was the projection for the 2019 school year. The following column is what the school reported on day 14, which was last week. And then the next column is the day 14 plus knowledge to kind of see what the total enrollment would be there. And then there's the last 2 columns are the capacity of the school and the utilization, if you looked at the impact of the students from knowledge plus their current enrollment would be. And so again, some of the schools would be able to handle the students, and then at Antioch Middle School, you would have the largest impact at 125% of capacity. And then that's really it. I can take questions now on that or wait until Dennis is finished.
Actually, I'd like to, if we have questions for regarding the enrollment, I'd like to get them asked while he's at the podium. But I just want to start with regards to our middle schools. So what are these numbers looking at? So I know we have several schools that are over capacity. So how much of an anomaly would this be if we found Antioch Middle School at 124.3%? Is this something that, oh my God, we've never had to deal with this before? Do we have other schools that are looking at numbers like this that are not a part of this? It's just our daily operating, our daily mode of operating?
I think that would place Antioch Middle School as the most overcrowded currently. If this were to happen, we would likely have to add portables or do some other reconfiguration to how they're laid out this school year.
Okay, and I know that we currently, and this is probably a question for you, Dr. I'm sorry, Mr. Prophet, but I know that, and I don't know off the top of my head, is Antioch Middle, I know we've got overcrowding in Antioch anyway. So is this a school that's currently on the plan for some sort of expansion or addition of classrooms?
I'll try to save Mr. Prophet from getting up. We
Okay.
are currently looking to find land in that area.
Trying to
We
get a
have-
bonus for the Christmas holidays. Keep going.
We've been looking for land in that area for quite some time. David, Mr. Prophet continues to do so. I know today he was involved in reaching out to several metro agencies, metro property, trying to see if there's any vacant land or land that's not usable, a building that we could purchase or something like that. And so he continues to look at those efforts.
Okay. Okay.
As you guys are aware, 2 of their feeder schools don't have 5th grade, and so
Right.
the problem would really even be worse than this if they had all of their zone students.
Correct. Correct. All right.
So that also equates at Antioch Middle to approximately 4 more teachers,
Right.
right? More or less, if you're doing 35 to 1, right? And
It would
so-
probably be more like 5, I think, but yeah.
For middle school, yeah.
So that's a challenge, right? We're not assuming Knowledge Academy teachers would jump ship and just go straight to the school where their kids were zoned for.
That'd be a Mr. Queen question, but yes.
That would be true for all of these schools, basically.
Yes,
We
it
would have
would.
to do a blitz on hiring if we were to have the school closed immediately, right? Which we're already facing challenges with that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would.
Okay.
And this does assume that 100% of these students would go to their
Sure.
zone school. There would be some natural runoff. It's just hard to say exactly what that would be.
Sure. Ms. Bush?
Yes, and what other charter schools are in the area? Because we have other options, not just for the zone school. Is that correct?
That is correct. There are a few schools within 5 miles, which is just what I used as kind of a decent driving distance. They are Lead Prep Southeast, Intrepid, Valor Flagship, and McMurray Middle School has a little bit of capacity as well. So those schools could handle some of these students as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about the enrollment impact? Very good, thank you. Next.
I would add also that when New Vision closed, there was about a 50% migration to other charters and a 50% migration to district schools. If you look at the second set of data under enrollment, just for your information, we went back and looked at how did each of these knowledge schools finish the year, what was their enrollment numbers. So the first column enrolled in 2019. Those would be how they finished the year last year. The next column, a 2020 projection, that's the projections that the district gave them for the 2020 school year. Day 14 was a self-reporting number. Those were reported by the schools. The next column, IC 822, are the number of students enrolled in Infinite Campus as of August 22nd. And then we did a count. We were out this morning working with the school. So the 827 count was a head count of attendance this morning for today. And if you look at that, you will see that there's a pretty drastic drop-off from their projections that we gave them earlier. Also, and again, I think we kind of talked, but this assumes that Knowledge Academy would all go to zone schools, which may or may not be the case. There's a timeline based on Tennessee charter law we wanted to share with you as well. The Office of Charter Schools is providing the following estimated timeline for the school closure process should the board vote or choose tonight to close the 3 Knowledge Academy schools. Tonight is August 27th. The board will potentially make a decision concerning these 3 schools, assuming that the board votes to close. August 28th, the Office of Charter Schools will notify Knowledge Academy's board chair of the decision to revoke the 3 charter contracts with Knowledge Academies. August 28th through September 6th, a representative from Knowledge Academies has 10 days, calendar days, to file an appeal to the State Board. October 26th through November 4th, the State Board will have 60 days to conduct a de novo review, that's a records review, which will include a public hearing, which is where they will hear testimony from certainly the district and from Knowledge Academies and any other constituents who would like to address them. It's our understanding that the recommendation will be made to the State Board during this second window of October 26th through November 4. That's kind of what the timeline would look like. And that's basically what we have prepared as a summary. If there's any questions, if not, I'll sit down.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Queen?
So the school remains open throughout the appeal process, I
Yes,
presume?
ma'am.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Queen? Okay. At this time, if there's a representative from Knowledge Academy that would like to take their 10 minutes to address the board, we're going to set a timer, and we respectfully ask that you stay within your 10 minutes.
Very well. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Battle, and also to the parents and students of Knowledge Academies. My name is Tom Lee. I'm here tonight representing Knowledge Academies, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. For too long, we have been a community at war with ourselves over education dogma. Our citizens are telling us that. Our voters are telling us that. Some of us say charter schools are awful, must be closed at all costs. Some of us say charter schools are the answer to all problems and must be expanded at all times. That conversation doesn't get us very far, and it hasn't gotten us very far. Also, that's not the work before you tonight. The work before you tonight is to review the record of 3 schools called Knowledge Academies. And as you do so, I ask and frankly expect and hope that you'll set aside dogma and approach the facts. Here's why. There are hundreds of families in the Antioch community who are counting on Knowledge Academies tomorrow, next week, next month. They've made a choice. They've made a choice. And these are not families who are unaware of the options they have. They know there are high schools called Cane Ridge and Antioch. They know that there are middle schools called Apollo and JFK. These are some of the poorest citizens in our community. Many of them, the parents that is, are first-generation immigrants. The children are trying to learn Algebra 2 at the same time they are learning English. It's as difficult a task as I think any of us can possibly imagine. But the families make this choice, and they do so because they know that in their community, according to the most recent TN Ready scores, the Knowledge Academy schools score higher academically than any zone school in that community. You just had a discussion about Antioch Middle School at capacity. Antioch Middle School is a priority list school. On the 2018 priority list, as you know, there is no new 2019 priority list. Here are the numbers. Among the 5 zone schools and the KA schools, at the middle school level, Knowledge Academy and KA at the crossings are first and second, respectfully, among those 7 schools for the 2018-19 school year in math, social studies, and English and language arts. All 3 categories that the TN Ready test assess, the 2 middle schools at KA are the highest scoring schools in the community. Among the high schools, the results are somewhat more mixed. To be candid with you, among Antioch, Cane Ridge, and Knowledge High, KA's high school finishes either first or second best in every category but one. Now, you were offered a different comparison a couple of weeks ago that compared KA to the district average. Fair enough, but the district average, of course, includes Hume Fogg and Meg's and my daughter's alma mater, Nashville School of the Arts. If that's the measure, then every Antioch school fails that test, which tells us it's the wrong test because it doesn't measure the real world, real life choices that parents have in the community where they live and they work. You've been asking lately about certified teachers. You know something about this. The newspapers reported this week that MNPS has more than 100 vacancies across its system. Antioch and Cane Ridge High School were 2 of the 5 schools with the most. But you should know these 2 things. One, there are more certified teachers at KA now than a year ago, and every non-certified teacher at KA is academically eligible for a state-approved prep program such as the program developed and offered by NEI and approved by the state of Indiana. Your staff knows this. They were given an application in May to approve the program. They've done nothing. In fact, they stopped responding to emails a long time ago about whether the partnership would be approved. Again, this is an educator prep program that stands not only to benefit knowledge academies, but all metro schools as it increases pathways to certification. But we've heard nothing since May on this application. And so it's fair to say you should have more certified teachers, and, well, we agree. We'd like to have that application approved. Now, that's one reason that parents are making this choice, and that's one basis, I think, upon which you should make your choice. I'd like to talk to you now about operations and finances, and I want to frame it by talking about two meetings. Both were recent, both involved persons that are in this room tonight. The first meeting is April 29, 2019. Mr. Queen is there, Dr. Thomas and Dr. Minnick. So too are members of the Board of Directors of Knowledge Academies and also the professional staff managing the school. This is the agenda for that meeting. It is 4 pages, single-spaced. There are more than 100 items. More than 100 items discussed with your staff about what's happening at Knowledge Academies. There's an academic update. There's a financial update. There is an operational update. And this wasn't the last of these meetings or updates. Every 2 weeks after this meeting, there are bi-weekly updates, written reports sent to your staff. Those written reports sometimes have exhibits, sometimes there are addenda, always there are references to documents that have been available, that have been reviewed, that have been discussed. Budgets, long-term plans, academic outlooks, programmatic development. In the public meetings, I know that you have not discussed these meetings or reports. They appear to have been shared with you, if at all, maybe tonight, maybe not. You've never seen a school budget, my guess is. You've never seen a long-term plan, and you've never seen the academic updates. But that is not the same thing as saying that MNPS hasn't seen them. Here I quote from Mr. Queen's recent deposition, which was referenced earlier. I want to read to you a colloquy concerning a notice that MNPS sent KA in April 2019, a time when Mr. Queen admitted in his testimony that the KA board chair, Mr. James Bristol, was, quote, open and transparent and trying to work in a good direction, close quote. Here's the colloquy. Begins with my question, and I'm quoting from an email authored by Mr. Queen, quote, and given the initial steps the school has initiated to correct them, our office, your office, is optimistic of the potential outcomes, close quote. Answer, we like to be optimistic. Yes, sir. The last thing you want to do is be pessimistic when you talk to someone. Question, I understand, but describe the steps that you had in mind here that the school was taking initially that gave you cause for optimism. Answer, broadly speaking, they were open. James was open. James Bristol, he was transparent. He wanted to work with our office, and he had reached outside to get some support. Question, to NEI, you mean? Answer, that's who they reached out to. And here I must add, your staff was told about NEI on April 16, 2019, when they attended a KA board meeting. MNPS has had a copy of the KA NEI contract since at least May 1, and until June 11, MNPS represented to KA that having NEI on board was a cause for optimism. By June 12, we were receiving an email from MNPS saying that having NEI on board was possibly a reason for revoking this contract. Now, the second meeting I'd like to talk about is the meeting that got us here. And despite the communication, the regular reports, and the cause for optimism, on June 11, as has been well documented, this board held a meeting behind closed doors to discuss KA. And then all the collaboration, all the engagement stopped, and here we are. We can have a vigorous debate, and we have, regarding the legal effect of that meeting on these proceedings, but there's no debate about this. Since June 11, there has been no conversation in any public board meeting involving Knowledge Academies other than why this school should be closed. That is not the reason, however, that we have not sent your staff duplicative documents in response to its demands. It is because of this. There is no document or group of documents, no facts, no information, no outside contracts, no teacher pay information, no students' attendance records that your staff has demanded since the closed-door meeting on June 11 that your staff had not already received, reviewed, or discussed. That's why Mr. Queen praised the board's transparency, because he had experienced it. I wish more of you had come to KA. Since April, Ms. Bush is the only board member who's been on campus, and that was to deliver a student to school a couple of weeks ago. Of course, Ms. Bush has previously been on our campus. Her children took the after-school ACT prep classes there, offered by In Full Motion. She herself, as she testified, was an employee for that nonprofit that provided the test prep. It's one of the outside contracts you heard so much about. Then the school year ended. The employer was frankly out at KA because it would not carry insurance or pay rent. And then within 3 weeks and without any prior public discussion, the board announced it would schedule a vote to revoke KA's charters. This process began 77 days ago with a closed-door meeting of this board that 2 judges would soon find likely violated the state's open meetings law. That's why an injunction was issued, and now here we are. The momentum begun then, coming to this inflection point, but these facts have not changed since June 11. KA is the top performing schools in Antioch. KA has complied with its contracts with MNPS, and KA opened its books, its records, and its work to MNPS in a manner so transparent that MNPS has praised it in writing and under oath. Tonight, you do have a choice, and we respect that. All we ask is that you respect the hundreds of KA families' right to make their choices too. Thank you.
You. Anything? You're done? Mr. Queen, any other information you'd like to share? You good? All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
Thank you. I have 2 motions. The first one is the motion to revoke KA's charter. I move to approve the following resolution. Whereas board members have received multiple complaints from parents.
I'm sorry. Is the resolution a second motion?
Now, this is going to be, I have 2. I have motion
okay.
to
Okay, I'm sorry.
revoke.
Just want to make sure.
Okay. It's good. It's good. Good. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Going back, I move to approve the following resolution. Whereas board members have received multiple complaints from parents, students, and staff at KA about the conduct of the staff, deficiencies in the learning environment, and management of funds. Whereas local news outlets have also reported on the shortfallings of KA, specifically the Tennessean articles dated May 30th, 2019. Whereas the Charter Office has investigated the news stories and multiple complaints lodged against KA, whereas despite 3 requests for information and documents from KA to respond to the board's concerns, KA has failed to provide requested documentation. Whereas, as being determined that KA has these problems, lack of teachers, including certified teachers, teachers not being paid on time or not being paid what was promised, the undelivered promise of scholarship money to families, poor academic performance as ATSI schools, and low scores compared to other charters, outsourcing the entire management of the school to NEI, and failing to seek approval that contract by the Board of Education. Lack of oversight from the KA board and being aware that businesses were being run out of the KA facility, and even closing the education instruction for the business purpose without clear documentation of where the money went. Lack of fiscal management, including losing substantial amounts of public monies in phishing scams, deficit balances, special education concerns, and all others discussed or stated during this board meeting or prior meetings, and those outlined by the Charter School Office. Therefore, and after consideration of all relevant information, I move to revoke the charter agreement of Knowledge Academy, KA at the Crossings, and Knowledge Academy High School for failure to meet general standards of fiscal management, failure to make sufficient progress toward the performance expectation set forth in the charter agreement, and commission of a material violation of the conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter agreement. This revocation action is based on all specific reasons as stated and discussed during this board meeting, including the presentation by the charter office as well as prior board meetings where KA was discussed.
So we have a, okay, so there's a motion to revoke the charter. We'll treat the resolution as support for the motion. And with a second from Ms. Frog. Any other comments or discussion? Any other questions? Okay.
I mean, I will, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'll just say, so we heard some comments on both sides of this situation, but we've been presented a whole lot of information about the fiscal impropriety or inappropriateness. I have met some of the board members, and I understand that, education is just hard. It is hard in an urban district, so we appreciate that the work the board did, the students did, the staff did, but I mean, we were outlined a number of concerns that we just have to be ready to address. We remember people, but we have to remember our students first always. And what Mr. Queen and Dr. Minnick laid out for us was very clear cut, and I thank you for the work that you all did with it.
Mr. Pinkston?
Excuse me. Just, for the record, I'm sure all of this is going to be part of a court case or part of an appeal to the State Board of Education. I just want to incorporate by reference my comments and questions from the July 9th board meeting into this discussion rather than belabor it and take up all the time. I just want to refer back to those comments. And, the other thing I would say is Knowledge Academies, unfortunately, looking forward for this board and this school district, Knowledge Academies is a signal flare for what the district needs to be doing that the district has not done effectively in the past. And that's not a criticism of Mr. Queen and his office, which are understaffed and under-resourced. But never in the history of MNPS has a charter school been audited. They file audited financial statements regularly based on reports from accountants that they hire and they control. But it's overdue time for the board to get serious about accountability of charter schools. We kind of know about Knowledge Academies, not because of ourselves, but despite ourselves. And the same is true for New Vision Academy, and the same is true for the problems that have happened at Republic, and the same is true for problems that have happened at others. Frequently, we learn about these things through the news media, and that's not acceptable. So the board needs to get tougher about accountability going forward. Knowledge Academies, I think, is an inflection point that we ought to consider appropriately. So again, I'm renewing my comments from July 9th. I would like to incorporate them by reference into this meeting, and happy to have future conversations about it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of, oh, I'm so sorry, what you doing? Put it up.
So, so sorry, may I be called on? Okay.
Please do.
So, I do want to say that in response to Mr. Lee not believing that we have not seen that agenda, we have seen that agenda. At least I will speak for myself that I have, in supporting documents. And on that note, I am deeply thankful for the amount of work that Mr. McQueen and his team have done to try to provide us as many documentation and as much supporting information that we can make our own information and decision on what we're talking about now. It is concerning, of course, and in many ways about from the contract with NEI to other ways that there's been there's been problems where we are we're concerned that yes, you might have in your opinion the best scores in your area, but you still are not following what we need you to do, and the need is that you follow the rules that are provided to you. Charter schools, from my past education, is supposed to be a place of innovation and a place where there's tremendous growth and where there's supposed to be the ability to have new things happening in a school that can be put into our public schools. And that is simply not what is happening here. In fact, there's the very, very opposite from having contracts without us knowing about it, which is documented in those supported documents. They go against what we were told just now by Mr. Lee as well, where we can see that we didn't know about them at that time on the 16th and all of those things. So I appreciate all the work that was done, and I hope that we are able to do right by these students and provide them the right new paths that they can take so they can find some success in a place that values their education.
Okay.
I just want to publicly thank Fran Bush for the work that she has done on this case. She was erroneously accused of contempt of court, and she's put a lot of time into this. She has attended multiple hearings. She was deposed for half of a day, and because of her honest and thorough testimony, the court ruled in the favor of MNPS twice. So I want to thank you, Fran, for your work, and I also want to thank Amy Frog for attending some of the sessions as well.
So let me just start out by saying that Knowledge Academy's lost nearly $300,000. That's not including the missing scholarship money at the school. The founder has disappeared, and now Knowledge Academies refuses to respond to multiple requests from our charter office for documentation on their financial irregularities. And I think I could just stop there. But I will say instead, they have put a lot of time and money into filing meritless lawsuits against this board and specifically against Fran Bush. And I attended the court hearing on, August 7th, which was the second of our 3 lawsuits that they filed. The first of which was an allegation that we violated Open Meetings Act, and I find it interesting that the attorney would sit and argue to us that we have violated the Open Meetings Act when we all know that we did not. In the back room, I'm the first to complain when we do violate open meetings. But at the court hearing on August 7th, the attorney tried to curtail this board's ability to conduct proper oversight of Knowledge Academies, tried to prevent board members from communicating with our own constituents, and from advocating on the best interests of the students in our districts. Knowledge Academies has specifically targeted Fran Bush. There has been a sort of smear campaign against her, and she has spent a great deal of time responding to these meritless claims in court in a extensive deposition. So I just want to thank Ms. Bush for this and for acting on behalf of the students in her district. She's been in a very difficult position. What I would like to have seen is better communication between Knowledge Academies and our charter office, which just did not happen. But because this school has been so litigious, I think it is very important to make a clear record, and I'm going to read through the points that I've made before of all of the allegations against them and the reasons why I believe that revocation is appropriate in this instance. Number one, these are the allegations. Number one, the school has been operating multiple side businesses out of the school, including for-profit businesses, leading to speculation that the school is just a shell pass-through for profiteering. Number two, failing to pay teachers on time. Number two, grade changing and inaccurate transcripts. Number three. Number four, missing scholarship money. Number five, failure to comply with federal requirements for special needs students. Number six, understaffing leading to double the workload for teachers. Number seven, operating with a deficit of $835,878 despite touting an annual revenue of $7.1 million. Number eight, losing $270,000 through what it claims was a mysterious online phishing scheme, $190,000 of which was later recovered. Number 9, dismal academic results per the Tennessean. Quote, according to the most recent state testing data, 16% of Knowledge Academy's middle school students rank as proficient in English, 15% are proficient in math. For the high school level, fewer than 5% of students were on track with or mastered algebra. For English, 12% of high school students were proficient in English, 19 were proficient in English 2, and 6% were proficient in English 3. Number 10, the sudden disappearance of its CEO and founder, Art Fuller, after allegations of financial malfeasance surfaced. Number 11, lack of textbooks and access to online textbooks. Number 12, forcing economically disadvantaged students to buy expensive uniforms. Number 13, the need for remedial college classes, even for high-performing Knowledge Academies graduates. Number 14, firing certified teachers and using uncertified substitutes as teachers. And number 15, management takeover of the school by a questionable charter management company from Florida called Noble Education Initiative, NEI. NEI claims to be nonprofit but has close links with a large for-profit management company called Charter Schools USA. According to the Tennessean, quote, NEI Executive Director Sherry Haig is married to Charter Schools USA CEO John Haig. Sherry Haig also is a former employee at Charter Schools USA, and the two companies are headquartered nearby on the same street in Fort Lauderdale. And of course, for-profit charter management companies are prohibited from operating in Tennessee. So the closure of this school is not based on dogma or any opinions about charter schools in general. There is just a lot of evidence that is very disturbing about Knowledge Academies, and all of our efforts as a board to start to address these problems have been met with meritless lawsuits. So I think the right thing to do tonight is to close the school.
Any other comments?
I just want to say that when we've had conversations about Knowledge Academies here, I've asked every time, what do the families know? What do the families at Knowledge Academy understand is happening here? And I've never gotten an answer about that. In fact, the answer I think I've gotten is we don't know, or we can't contact them. And so my concern, especially if there's a lot of English learner students and families, what their understanding is of this process and what they're being told or not told. And for me, fundamentally, this is about making sure that we are protecting students and their interests. And I just want to say that for me, first and foremost, we have to think about what is best for these students. And while recognizing that revocation means they might end up back in our schools, I think we also have to be prepared for what that means, and we have to do the due diligence ahead of time, even as we're watching perhaps an appeal process go through, so that schools are not unprepared to receive them and that families are welcomed back into Metropolitan Nashville schools if that's the case. And so I'm hoping that our staff will be prepared for that.
So does anyone want to speak to, I think prior to the vote, I would appreciate if we can, I mean, I know we saw the timeline, but we can just speak clearly. I think what was not in that timeline was the communications and how that's going to be handled. What support are we going to provide to families, and when does that support start? How can they access it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, and I'll invite Ryan back up to the podium. We have engaged a cross-collaborative team, and maybe Mr. Queen, if you want to come up, to begin looking at what a transition plan will look like, an effective one. And so there's been representatives from each of our departments thinking through things such as communications and the supports that will be available to our families. So if you all just want to highlight some of the spaces we've talked about and strategies to ensure successful transitions if this is the desire of the board.
I'm going to jump in real quick first and then let him talk, unless you want me to even hold off.
Well, I think what I was getting ready to ask is maybe what you're getting ready to say, which is we're in the middle of active litigation, and part of that, my understanding is, that we're not supposed to be communicating with families until this matter is resolved. Is that correct, Ms. Harkey?
That is correct. That's why we have not communicated with parents and families up to this point. And in fact, the chancellor has made it very clear that she is not going to get in the way of the board's oversight of charter schools. There is a Tennessee code that actually speaks specifically to the procedure for closure. So if there is a vote by the board to close these schools, we would certainly be complying with that Tennessee code 4913-130. I know the district has already started working on that so that we're not behind the ball, that we're ready to go forward and make sure that we're complying with this code, which does outline some very specifics of when parents and families need to be notified. And again, the chancellor has often referenced this very specific code as the process or the procedure should there be a vote for closure.
So this vote kicks off that communication, or does the resolution of the active litigation kick off that communication?
This Tennessee code says within 1 calendar week of a decision to revoke a charter agreement, that the charter school must notify. So, I mean, I think it's based on our decision is when we start the notification, we start the process, recognizing that the actual closure would be either at the end of the year or whenever the board decides.
Mr. Pinkston.
I'd love to have the conversation tonight, but as Ms. Froeg pointed out, the charter operator has been so belligerent and so litigious that I think it's advisable just to follow the statute for now and take it one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just follow up. The Office of Charter Schools has a step-by-step process for school closure. Many of those steps we can begin to prepare for during a potential, depending upon the board vote, a potential appeal. But even after a determination by the state, if the state board determines to uphold a potential vote to close, we have a step-by-step process, procedure, transfer of records, and all those kinds of things. So we have a pretty tight process that we will follow. We can provide that for you if you'd like to see it. We have provided it to senior staff.
Thank you, Mr. Queen.
I don't think we need Ryan to come up. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to move forward with the revocation for the charter of the 3 Knowledge Academy schools. All in favor of moving forward the revocation, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Director's reports.
Ms. Bush, in a second.
I'm sorry. You do have a second motion. Come on.
Okay. My second motion is for immediate closure. I move to make the revocation of the KA charter agreements effective at the conclusion of this semester, December 14th, 2019, as opposed to at the end of the school year, based upon the board's findings of fraud, misappropriation of funds, flagrant disregard of charter agreement, or similar conduct as evidenced by Knowledge Academy's failure to deliver promised scholarship money of $500,000 to parents who relied on the school's promises in choosing Knowledge Academies for their child. The school's misleading representations to families regarding scholarship money amount to fraud. Knowledge Academy's misappropriation of funds intended for the education of students. Knowledge Academies has an extensive history of fiscal mismanagement and misappropriation of tax dollars, operating with a deficit of $835,000. Despite taunting annual revenue of $7.1 million, including losing substantial amounts of public money in the amount of $270,000 in an online phishing scheme. Deficit balances, the failure to pay teachers on time, and the lease of school buildings to outside businesses, including at least one for-profit business, without clear documentation of where the rental proceeds went. The school's founder has now disappeared. No one can account for the public tax dollars that are missing, and the school has repeatedly ignored requests from MNPS for documentation to explain physical irregularities. Knowledge Academy's flagrant disregard of its charter agreements. Knowledge Academy outsourced management of its operations to a Florida-based charter management company, Noble Education Initiatives, that has close ties to for-profit corporations without the required approval by the Board of Education. Knowledge Academies did this without explaining the scope of the new management to MNPS. Charter Schools Office without informing the MNPS Board about the change and without MNPS approval of the NEI contract. Knowledge Academy's failure to respond to repeated requests from the MNPS Charter Office to provide required documentations that might allow the Board to find otherwise. That is my motion.
You've heard the motion for immediate revocation at the end of the spring, this term, fall semester. Is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or discussion?
My only thing is I would want to hear from our administration and staff about how quickly they could, I mean, because we want to keep the best interests of students in mind for sure. So I just want to see, do you think you could have all those portables out there to represent, to support the 135 extra students that might be at Antioch Middle, the however many extra students that might be at all the other schools, to do it that quickly? Would it hurt our students or would it help them? I mean, I don't know that you have the answer tonight, but that would be the question that I ask.
So I have a response tonight.
Okay.
So ideally, we would want to be able to do that. But as I look at these numbers that tell us that we're already over capacity, if we go back to Ms. Walker's point that this means we have to find extra teachers, not just extra space for students. As I said in the last meeting, we want to do this. We've decided that we're doing something that's in the best interest of our students. We need to do that in a way that is in the best interest of our students. So I don't see rushing this process, rushing the closure, putting the district in a position where we're potentially doing more, we're exacerbating an already not good situation for our students. So that would be my concern. Any other comments?
Well, I have more of a question than anything. So let's say that we do not vote tonight to revoke it in the fall, at the end of the fall. Can we bring that back after we have a recommendation from staff and it still be done quickly enough to close? This, I am kind of asking for a recommendation from you. Would you all be able to pull anything together to present to us to help us help you?
Yes, so I think ideally what we will be looking at are the numbers on students, where they might transition, thinking about all the implications around communications and staffing. So time to do that is always helpful and useful to make sure that we're well prepared. So I think the motion was immediate, but closure at the end of the semester, which would give time for the teams to plan accordingly.
So my concern is still that the statute says that in a week, a communication should be going out after this vote. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I think we can still follow the law and the procedure, and just what we had put in that notification or how that notice is rolled out is going to be dependent upon what the board decides.
So what I'm saying is, I'm sorry, I know you're attorneying your little heart out right now. I just need a yes or no. The statute says that if we vote tonight to close, within 5 days, the charter operator needs to send out notification to the families. Is that what I heard, or did I misunderstand?
That is what you heard, the first step.
The first step.
In the process.
Okay, so the first step in the process, I know there's more. So what are we expecting to be communicated to parents if we can't decide today when the closure is going to happen? So again, what are we doing that's in the best interest of our parents if we're sending out a letter today that says you might close at the end of the year, but it's a possibility that in 2 weeks we'll come back as a board and you'll close a whole 4 months sooner. So again, guys, I know, I get it. If it were at all possible, if we had 135 empty seats sitting at Antioch Middle today, I'd be right there with you. But we don't. And again, if we're going to do this, and we're saying we're doing it not to get back at anybody, but we're saying we're doing it for what's best for students, are we honestly doing it the best way?
I am in Antioch, and I hear from these students and these parents. I've been through hell trying to get these students out of that misery that they're in. I have heard from students. I have heard from parents. They're ready. I have a student who poured her eyes out behind her parents' back and sent me a text, a message on my Facebook page that said to me, I don't know what's going to happen tonight, and I don't know how much weight what I'm saying to you is going to make. She said, but I'd much rather for this school to close so I can have an academic future. Okay, so this is not about anything else but our students. I'm not saying immediate closure today. As far as tomorrow, they have to pack their bags. I think that it is fair enough to give parents an opportunity to start looking and giving them their options. That's exactly what we're doing. And I am not going to risk any more of our students not getting the academic support they need. They're not getting it. Students are telling me they're not getting, that's why the numbers look the way they look now.
I understand.
Okay, so it's not that they have one option to go to Antioch Middle School. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the board floor. That's just one option of a zone school for middle schools. But there are other options that we can take and we can make, because the goal and the point is our students. And I want to make sure that we're clear about that. It's about the students.
So my other question that I have is, a parent at Knowledge Academy watching this meeting today, can they contact the district office and start the process of a transfer? I need some words.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this vote and doing it, saying it has to be done by December 14th, does not prohibit a parent from choosing another charter school or tomorrow, or choosing to go to one of the district schools that they're zoned for. Is that
Just like
correct?
they've been doing
I'm
it
sorry, I
already.
still have the floor.
Okay, well,
I still
you're
have the
asking the
floor.
question.
I didn't ask you the question, though. I'm asking the district administration.
Sure.
So
Okay.
the answer to
Dennis,
that
do
question
you mind
is
coming back up, because no one's answering her question? Who can answer her question?
no. Dennis can't.
Okay, well, who
Ms.
can answer her
Dr.
question?
Battle has already answered it, and Mr. Prophet and his team have already. Well, somebody heads over there. We're not, and we're confirming. Mr. Pinkston.
Yes, so there's recent historical precedent for quick closure, and I don't even think the end of the semester is quick closure. I mean, that's 4 months, and that's plenty of time for an organization to be able to respond. But in the fall, in the spring, as you'll recall, we negotiated, I guess for lack of a better term, Mr. Queen, the closure of New Vision Academy right before spring break, and those students were placed within a week. And it's in a similar part of town that has the same sort of capacity pressures. I think, there's a couple of three guiding principles here. The first, to kind of draw on an analogy from the healthcare profession, the Hippocratic Oath is do no harm. And I think by leaving students in that environment, we are, in fact, doing harm to them, and we need to plan an exit ramp. The second component is, we've got a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Nashville, and this part of the rationale for this closure is this organization that runs these schools has clearly abused their fiscal authority or lack of authority, and that's when accountability happens, in addition to the academic problems. And the third thing is, like I said earlier, we can do this. I mean, that's a 4-month window. That's more than reasonable. I frankly would prefer to go sooner, but I understand the reason for making it a clean break at the end of the semester. So with that in mind, I support and will vote for the motion.
So I think the one point, I think Ms. Bush actually made it in her first motion, was that the schools, and we just want to be clear, the schools that are on the list are not the only schools that the students have options for. The second thing is the point that I wanted clarification on, that a family can choose to transfer from a Knowledge Academy school at any point in time. And I just want to make sure that the communication that goes out is just consistent. So just understanding that if we vote for this and we approve the motion for immediate, to your point, kind of immediate, end of December, end of the fall's term, closure, that's what the communication needs to reflect. And that's what the communication from the charter operator needs to reflect. And Mr. Queen, I would just be looking to your office to help confirm and verify that that is what it says.
So I want to make sure that I have some clarifying points. So the immediate closure is at what date? What is the date? We keep saying 4 months, we're saying immediate.
December 14th, that is the last day of the first semester.
Correct. So in that situation, Mr. McQueen, the process that we have internally to close a school, what timeline are they based upon? I have a feeling that we can do it in 4 months, but do we have that process already done?
The closure process we can do easily by that date. Part of what we would need to do would be contingent upon any potential appeal decision by the state board.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that was my other question to the rest of this. I mean, what happens, so there's an appeal process. How does that affect what we actually can do? Or do we just move on until somebody tells us differently?
I believe that's why Mr. Queen included the appeal process kind of timeline.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing on this current motion, you're thinking about an end of the semester closure.
December 14th.
They should be able to complete the appeal process prior to that time. I'm not making any guarantees, but that is within the statutory defined timeline, that they would be able to complete that state appeal prior to the end of the semester. She says she's okay, I asked.
She's good, I'm good.
My job as a school board member
right,
is
it's
to
to
support
support you.
MNPS
If she
administration.
says she's good, I'm good.
And, okay, but I will just remind you all, please let us know if there's a way we can advocate, whatever,
Help, do
support,
whatever. Yeah.
moving portable. My back is strong.
And if y'all get tired, she said.
Yes.
So what happens if the appeal is in the favor of Knowledge Academies? Is the situation closed? They just continue on? How does that work?
Pull out the Tennessee code, so that I'm using the exact language. Since this will be happening prior to December 31st of 2020, this is the process, that if the State Board of Education overturns the local Board of Education's decision to revoke a charter agreement, then the State Board of Education shall remand the decision to the local Board of Education, and the local Board of Education shall remain the authorizer. So if the State Board were to revoke the revocation decision, Knowledge Academies would come right back and continue as one of MNPS's charter schools.
So then we would,
Say never mind.
well, we would just say, well, we'll just continue on, and we would not be able to sort of repress this case. We would have to wait for further issues with the school, different issues, in order to perhaps pursue something else. It's not like you could just retry this case, right?
There's a process in our authorization handbook. There's a number of steps that are available to this LEA in addressing deficiencies in schools. It goes everywhere from a notice of concern, which is a warning, to a notice of deficiency, which the board office gets copies of all of those, along with senior leadership. There's also a status of probation that's available. There's a school review that can be conducted, and then lastly would be closure. So we would likely, if the state board voted to keep the school open, we would look at that and determine where do we need to be then in this process of supporting low-performing schools.
Yeah, I just want to point out that, the only reason we're in the middle of this protracted process is because of an abject failure by the Board of Knowledge Academies to do its job over a period of years. And rather than put your students and families through all this turmoil, you might want to do what other responsible charter operators have done, which is come to the table, say, we've made a mistake, we have failed our students and families, we have allowed corruption to run rampant in our school. Therefore, we're going to do a cooperative closure, and we're going to do our best to work with the board collaboratively to make this happen. But they're not doing that. This is about money. This is about real estate. This is about legal fees. This is about something else that's not students and families. So let's just recognize that Knowledge Academies is the one that's dragging this out, not the school board.
Once again, for the sake of making a record, I just want to say, first of all, that I take very seriously the displacement of students mid-year. I know that is never good for families, and I am sorry for the chaos that this is putting families and staff in the middle of the year. But given all the information that we have about the school, we've given Knowledge Academy millions of dollars. They can't account for the money. We're about to give over millions more this year. We don't have proper oversight. There's been an obvious and complete lack of oversight by the Knowledge Academies board. The students aren't getting what they need. We now have students and parents and teachers coming to us asking us to close the school, and that says a lot. So I just think warehousing the students in the Knowledge Academies buildings for the next year, potentially losing more money. We have children that are getting ready to go to college that aren't going to get what they need to be ready for college. It's just the wrong thing to do. I think the best thing to do is move forward as quickly as possible and just rip the Band-Aid off and deal with it and try to get these kids in wherever we can, the best options for them within the district. And also, Dr. Battles made it clear that we will be able to make accommodations for these families. So I will support the motion.
Ms. Bush, can you state the last part of your motion that has what you want done and the date, so we can make sure it's clear what we're voting on? Just the part at the end.
So it was kind of like a step process. So do you want me to go
That
back
I move
to-
for immediate revocation effective.
Oh, you want the first part?
Yeah, just the
Okay,
motion.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
So I move to make the revocation of the, I'm sorry, let me see. Okay, I'm sorry. I move to make the revocation of the KA Charter Agreement effective at the conclusion of this semester, December 14th, 2019, as opposed to at the end of the school year, based upon the board's findings of fraud, misappropriation of funds, flagrant disregard of the charter agreement, or similar conduct as evidence. And then I go right into
Yeah,
the
so
evidence.
stop, yeah, you can stop there, but I want to make a friendly amendment,
Okay.
because you only referenced one charter. So is it not three?
Yeah, it's
Is that
three.
correct? Yeah, so just a friendly amendment that we're referencing all three of the Knowledge Academy charters.
Absolutely, and I hate to do this, but I'm probably going to have you
Do
go
'em
back
separately?
and do the same thing
Yeah,
for each
because I just thought
of the
about
first
that.
ones.
The first motion, you only
I don't
referenced
think you
one.
have to relive everything. You
Yeah,
just need
please
to
don't
take
relive everything.
motions
Yeah.
specific to those referencing the discussion and the charter office information.
December 9th. And the date needs to be December 19th. So if you don't mind, can you put up there they are right there. See, so we just need a motion for Knowledge Academy, Knowledge Academy's high school, and then a separate motion for KA at the crossings.
Yes.
So first one is, we're going to redo just the revocations and then come back with the date vote. So we're about to do 6 motions, guys. All right? So we have can I get a motion for the revocation of Knowledge Academy's charter?
So moved.
Okay, a second. All in favor of the revocation of the charter for Knowledge Academy, raise your hand. Thank you. Unanimous. Can I get a motion for the revocation of Knowledge Academy's high school, the charter for Knowledge Academy's high school?
So moved.
Here's a second. All in favor of the revocation of the charter for Knowledge Academy's high school, raise your hand. Thank you. May I get a motion for the revocation of the charter for KA at the crossings?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor for the revocation of the charter for KA at the crossing, raise your hand. Thank you. It's unanimous. Now, may I get a motion for the revocation of Knowledge Academy's charter effective December 19th? It's the 19th, not the 14th.
Is it the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay.
December 19th.
So moved.
May I get a second?
Second.
Is all in favor of the revocation effective December 19th of the Charter for Knowledge Academy? Unanimous. May I get a motion for the immediate revocation?
Throw
Was
in
it
on
unanimous?
these based
Oh.
on so all of these are based on the discussion throughout the day, but I also know that Ms. Bush had brought very specific findings for fraud, the misappropriation of funds, and flagrant disregard of the charter agreement. So if we can just reference for those reasons. I think that the other 3 motions with the revocation was very clear from the board before
Gotcha.
what y'all were doing.
All right, and thank you. May I get a motion for the revocation for the closure of Knowledge Academy, effective December 19th, based on the reasons shared by Board Member Bush?
Fraud,
Related to-
misappropriation funds, and flagrant disregard of the charter agreement. or
Related to
similar conduct.
fraud, misappropriation of funds, and flagrant disregard of the charter agreement.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. 2 opposed. Jeannie and I. Just ditto that all the way down. May I get a motion for the closure of Knowledge Academy's high school effective December 19th, based on the allegations of fraud, the findings of fraud, misappropriation of funds, and flagrant disregard for the charter agreement?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, raise your hand. 6 and 2. Same 6, same 2. May I have a motion for the closing of Knowledge Academy at the Crossing effective December 19th based on findings of fraud, misappropriation of funds, and flagrant disregard for the charter agreement?
So moved.
So moved. And a second. Thank you very much. All in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed? Two. Got it. All righty. Thank you. And that is it. Director's report.
All right, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, board members, thank you for a few moments for us to share briefly our ACT strategic plan update. Our students come from many different diverse backgrounds and have very different dreams and goals. It doesn't matter if a student is college-bound, headed straight into a career, or enlisting in the armed forces. All students must take the ACT to graduate, and their scores are part of the measurement of educational success. The ACT is for all students, and as educators and mentors of tomorrow's future workforce, it is our shared responsibility to make sure Metro Nashville Public Schools graduates are ready for their next chapter, which includes doing well on the ACT. An ACT score doesn't define a student's potential, but a score of 21 and above does open doors and increase opportunities. A composite score of 21 or higher is indicative of students who can solve complex problems and communicate effectively, students who are prepared for the rigor of post-secondary studies and the workforce. Furthermore, a 21 on the ACT unlocks more scholarship potential in 2- and 4-year colleges and universities. Unfortunately, district-wide, many of our students are not yet reaching a composite of 21 or above. This ACT strategic plan is a plan for helping students reach a minimum score of 21 on the ACT. It represents months of cross-functional work with teachers, principals, community partners, and district administrators. Successfully preparing students for college and career doesn't begin in middle and high school, and this plan outlines that path, starting in kindergarten and progressing through 12th grade. To make sure at every grade level our actions are advancing and supporting our students. It examines what is needed from the materials and training we provide teachers to engaging our students and their families to leveraging the resources and skills of our community partners. I appreciate the members of this task force who have looked at our current numbers, worked with our current support providers, delved into the data behind those numbers, and developed this plan. I look forward to seeing it in action and seeing more of our students reach this important measure. So I would like to invite Dr. Paul Changus up to the podium. He will kick off this brief overview of our ACT performance and our strategic plan as we begin this work this academic school year. Dr. Changus.
Thank you, Dr. Battle and members of the board. And I did hear you say brief. We will keep this short. But as Dr. Battle pointed out, the ACT has a lot of consequences in terms of scholarship opportunities and so forth. It's a graduation requirement for our students as well. The first slide is a quote from the state strategic plan that kind of summarizes the perspective that the ACT is the culminating assessment of our high school students, our K-12 preparation. I'm just going to read that quickly. The ACT serves as a gateway to college and career in Tennessee, determining students' eligibility for the HOPE Scholarship, requirements for post-secondary remedial or developmental coursework, and sometimes entry-level salary. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the last 3 years of district-wide results. We do not yet have the 2019 ACT data. That will be coming a little later this fall. You've seen the information before, but we just want to reiterate where we currently stand and the trends we're seeing. We have increased the number of students tested by 487 students over recent years. We've also seen that participation rate increase by 7 percentage points. In past years, we had seen a situation typically when more students tested, we typically had a negative impact on test scores as more students who may not have seen themselves as college-bound and not motivated to take the test took the test. But in the last 3 years, we've seen an increase in not only the number of students who've hit the 21, that college readiness benchmark, and that number's increased by 195 students. The percentage of students hitting that benchmark is increased by a full percentage point. It's slow but steady progress, and we've also seen the composite average increase by 1/10 of a point per year. Last time I was before you presenting our 10-ready and growth scores, we looked at the ACT results on value added. This is 2019 data. This is the only ACT data we have thus far. But we did, again, just as a reminder, we've seen growth that exceeded the state average from where students were projected to be based on their prior history. And on average, our students are scoring 3/10 of a point higher on the composite than they were projected. Again, those projections are based on what's happened statewide. The next graph, we've been getting these projections for years, but until 2011, we never had the data electronically. So last year, I took a look at where our students were back in the 3rd and 4th grade when they first started taking TCAP, and we were getting projections not only to the next year on the test, but years ahead of time to the ACT exam, based on the assumption that these students would have teachers of average effectiveness year after year. So what this graph shows, the horizontal or x-axis, shows the probability that was predicted back in 2011 of students scoring a 21 7 years down the road. So you see their students are grouped, those who fell in the 0 to 9.9% probability range, all the way up to the 90 to 99% range. In the Y or vertical axis are the percent of students 7 years later who actually scored a 21. I think the first thing that's apparent is there's a very strong relationship between those projections and actual performance. In fact, that relationship is stronger than I think we would like to see, but it emphasizes how critical those early grades are in terms of future success. The students who fell in that less than 10% probability range, virtually none of those students hit a 21. The students who were above 90% probability, almost all of them hit that mark. If you look at a couple points in between, you see those numbers steadily increasing as their probabilities increased. And we actually have numbers in terms of actual performance that are a little better than the probabilities. So the relationship is strong, but there are exceptions. This red line represents an actual student who graduated from Cane Ridge High School last year, and we have de-identified the student. But this is showing that student's relative ranking. This is on English Language Arts, TCAP 10 ready, and eventually end of course exams. The student was scoring around the 2nd percentile back in the 3rd and 4th grade. Made, as you can see, some pretty steady and exceptional progress over time. Back in the 4th grade, this student was given a 2% chance of scoring a 21 on the ACT. Last year, as an 11th grader, the student graduated this past spring. As an 11th grader, this student scored a 24. This is the kind of change in terms of trajectory that we're hoping for. And I see you're passing around. We do have a one-page handout of the ACT, kind of a brief overview of the strategic plan, and you should have the PowerPoint as well. But this is a student who's beaten the odds, who is clearly outperformed past expectations. What we need to do is to increase those types of trends, and we don't have too many that are this dramatic, but we do have a number of students who do exceed those expectations. The projections are based on average performance. If we can exceed that by just a little bit each year, we greatly enhance that student's chances, if we do that year after year, of getting on the right trajectory to future success. So with that in mind, we've set a target for the district to double the percent of students scoring a 21 or higher by the year 2025. It is an ambitious goal, but we think that it is one that is realistic. But as we saw from the previous graph, This is not going to happen if we just count on the high schools doing this with test prep. And test prep helps and certainly has given us some positive momentum. But if we really want to move the needle, it's got to start in those early grades. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Executive Director Carl Carter.
Dr. Gentry, I have a question. Is this a good time to ask Paul?
Yeah, if he's, yeah.
Paul, on the page 6, the one prior to this, my understanding is that oftentimes in elementary school, girls do better than boys because elementary school is kind of designed more for girls than it is boys. So how common is it that boys can make or do make more progress in the upper grades than girls? Is there any research that you've done to look at this?
We've looked at it somewhat in the past, but there's research on a broader basis. And some of it is subject specific, and certainly in English language arts, we do typically see female students outperform that. In mathematics, it's not necessarily the case, and some of that is based on patterns of career choice and interest. But I will tell you that as we were looking at these types of situations, we had a female student at McGavick High School who had a very similar pattern. They're out there. We can provide a breakdown. Typically, what I've seen in our data is there's not that big a difference over time in terms of growth. But we've got lots of exceptions, and there are a lot of other factors. And I'll just mention that we are looking at these types of patterns for students who are currently in the district, to have some focus groups, to have some conversations for students who have made this kind of progress, to see what was a motivating factor in that trajectory.
Thank you. My second question for you, Paul, is on page 7. When you're talking about doubling the number of students who can achieve a 21 composite score, what does that look like incrementally? I mean, that's a big goal. And how many now are achieving a 21? What percentage?
So if I go back just a little bit, you'll see the trend has been very slow. We had 32.3% in 2018 that are hitting the 21. We haven't seen that number yet for 2019. So obviously, we're not going to do it at that trajectory. So, you know, we are looking at ramping that up. But again, we're looking at setting targets, not just at the high school level, but what would it take for a current 4th grader, 5th grader over time? We're working on developing some reports that we would provide to schools to show what that would mean at the end of each year on 10 Ready, what it might mean in terms of MAP. I don't have a good number for you at this point, but I think it's going to have to, you know, happen in the early grades, and we're going to have to build that foundation. But we are going to be setting targets. That was one of the requests we had from schools, to set some targets by grade level in terms of those trajectories, and we'll be happy to share that hopefully later this fall.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carl Carter, and I am one of the executive directors serving the high schools. So I just want to talk about the phases of our ACT strategic plan development. This journey began last fall with a discussion with central office leaders and high school principals around the ideal state of what ACT performance would look like. And the idea of forming a task force was discussed, and what the framework of that committee would look like going forward. Because we understood that in order to truly impact ACT achievement, ACT preparation really needs to begin in pre-K. And in an effort to have a pre-K through 12 approach, we were intentional in recruiting staff from all tiers. So that was phase 1. Phase 2, in January, a group of about 60 teachers, principals, community members, and central office staff convened to be a part of the MNPS ACT Task Force Committee. And the goal of this committee was to craft a strategic plan for improving ACT achievement for all students. During this phase, the ACT Task Force Committee met to develop goals, strategies, and action steps. Also during this phase, feedback was used to further refine each action step, goal, and strategy. And the strategic process yielded 3 overarching themes: communications and culture, data and research, PD and instruction. And now we are right in phase 3 where we would like to begin implementation. The strategic plan, as you can see from this slide, these are the components, and we try to be in line with our MNPS strategic plan. And so as you see, a lot of the components there you will also find in the MNPS strategic plan. And again, coming out of our task force work, these are the 3 areas of focus that I just mentioned: culture, communications, data and research, and professional development and instruction. And now we will hear about our goals around culture and communications.
Good evening. I am Dr. Garner, Executive Principal of MNPS Virtual School, and I'm excited to share that we are in our 7th year of an ACT initiative at our school. And the goal of the Culture and Communications Committee was to create a pre-K-12 culture of collaboration and shared accountability where students feel supported, encouraged, and challenged, and to be invested in their own success on the ACT. We've developed 3 strategies that will, 1, align and strengthen collaboration for the ACT success, educate families on the importance of the ACT, and finally, engage our community and business partners. I'm excited to share that this committee is developing a district-wide communication strategy that will include an ACT toolkit for all schools that promotes vertical alignment. We also plan to work with the data and research team to identify and communicate the pre-K-12 milestones and targets towards achieving a 21 or higher on the ACT. Thank you.
So with respect to our first goal of supporting schools and utilizing these scores, that gets into the idea of integrating results from multiple assessments and making those predictions and providing the kinds of targets for schools that we were talking about to get students on the right trajectory. With our second goal, we want to support students and families in understanding the scores and the importance of the ACT in terms of what it means for the future. And part of that is developing a parent-friendly report that provides that information, including the longitudinal history for students. And finally, we want to support the rest of the task force, other departments, our schools, in terms of the information they need to make this data actionable and for their decision making. And now professional development.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Slayton. I'm the Director of Mathematics, and I served on the Professional Development and Instruction Committee. Our first goal is to provide rigorous ACT-aligned curricular materials for teachers at all tiers and across all content areas. We recognize that ACT readiness is built through rigorous core instruction every day for all students. So in service of this goal, we will consider the cognitive demand of all newly adopted materials and supplement existing materials to ensure that they will adequately prepare our students for future success. Our second goal is to build educator capacity to ensure delivery of rigorous instruction that reflects ACT demands on student thinking, pre-K to 12. We believe this begins with an understanding of the correlation between the ACT standards and the Tennessee standards. This correlation will be included in our scope and sequence documents moving forward. Additionally, academic professional development offered within the district will make explicit reference to ACT readiness where appropriate. We want the teachers to understand that preparing students for the ACT is not one more thing they're supposed to do. It's actually the work that they do every day to ensure that our students are prepared for their futures. And our third goal is to establish district-wide structures to ensure implementation of rigorous ACT-aligned instruction. We will clarify what ACT readiness looks like looks like at each tier, and monitor master schedules to ensure adequate instructional time is allotted for all subjects at each grade level. We also plan to design structures that will allow us to share best practices and community partnership resources across schools. For instance, we have schools that have partnered with organizations such as the Martha O'Brien Center, Oasis College Connection, In Full Motion, and Latino Achievers out of the YMCA. We want all schools to be aware of possible partnerships such as these that could support their efforts in ACT preparedness, so that we're putting that structure in place to do just that, so they can share their ideas. So as we conclude today, we wanted to offer a few ideas of how you might support this work moving forward. The first is to allocate funding for schools who must make extra provisions to ensure all students take the ACT. I'm not sure if you know or not, but the regulations to administer the ACT are very specific, and it often is a challenge for students to do that within, or schools to do that within their own buildings. So they might have to secure an alternate location so that they can meet the requirements for the distance between tables, or the distance between chairs, or the maximum number of people allowed in the room. So that can cause extra costs for the schools. Additionally, we ask that you advocate to support our current state policy that requires all 11th graders to take the ACT. As mentioned previously, we think the ACT opens doors for our students, and we want to continue to provide that opportunity for all of our students. Thank you.
That's it.
Yeah. I have a question, please. So ACT is originally given at 9th grade, is that correct?
So the state requirement is for students to take the ACT in the 11th grade year.
But do we provide some pre-ACT work at 9th grade?
Yes, many of our high schools currently provide some level of ACT coursework and practice test opportunities for students. And the goal here, as this team has engaged upon in looking at the strategic plan of how we can start the preparation with the rigor around the standards much earlier, and also the ideas around the preparation it takes to perform successfully on the ACT.
I'm aware of a book that that students have had access to, that the district has actually provided, whereby they take the test the first time, and then they're given this book, and they can thumb through the book to areas where they did not do so well, and have lots of opportunities to practice in that specific area. Are we still doing that?
Yes, so you will hear more about the specific materials that have been reviewed from this team that we're looking to utilize moving forward. Currently, we do have some of that happening, but we also have an online adaptive ACT prep program where students can take a pretest. They identify the areas in which, the top 3 areas in which they need to work to improve their ACT scores. They go into the program and they test prep along the lines of what they need to focus on and build their skills around. You're welcome.
Just to add to ACT, you guys know I love ACT. So just to answer Jill's question, kids can take the ACT as early as younger than 13 years old. So I just want to make sure we all know that. They can take it as early as 13 years old. And again, I go back to it is definitely more effective for our students to start early on than later on, because when they go to high school, they lose those skills, because most of the ACT is made up of 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade, and some 9th grade work. So that's the reason why some of our high schools struggle, our high school students struggle, because they've lost those skills. And that's why those partnerships that was just mentioned, like In Full Motion, they have bridged that gap for those high school students so that we can prep them and be able to actually kind of kind of help them, support them by bringing some of those skills back. You can't bring them all back, but that's why they get that support. And that's the reason why a lot of the students score much higher. We do have our middle school. I'm really proud to say that Eagle View is going to start having ACT prep for our 5th graders out there in Antioch. There's a lot more middle schools that also in full motion, other partnerships that was mentioned that are now partnering with our middle schools across the district. So it definitely means it's much more effective if we start early on than later on, as we're talking about. So, and of course, I don't know if we know this, but just for the record, they can only take the ACT up to 12 times. There is a limit to taking the ACT. So that's the reason why it's very important that we get these students the support they need early on and not later on. It's not impossible. My son did make a 24 his senior year of high school, so that was very impressive. And ACT, their say is that it's very impossible for high school students or seniors to really score high at that level because they're focused on so many different things. But it can happen. So thank you for your initiatives, but we definitely want to make sure we can start focusing on early on and not later on ACT prep. 2025 is a little long time. It's like 5 years before we meet that goal. And I definitely would like to challenge the district that we can definitely meet those goals way before 2025. If we continue our mission and our stance on moving the needle early on, this will change a lot sooner.
I'll just say, I remember you standing at the podium last year. It was a little tense, but I appreciate the initiative that you all took. Our ACT scores are continuing to grow. So again, a testament to our students, our staff, our administrators. Just thank you for the hard work you're doing. I will say to the day I die, urban education is hard because not only are we having to educate on a shoestring budget, but we have diverse needs of 86,000 students. So I just don't want us to minimize or ever minimize what may seem like minimal growth, because to move 100 students up to meeting at least a 21 is a phenomenal job. So I just thank you. I will thank you.
And thank you to this team because they've poured in a lot of time and effort. It takes a lot to really grow a culture by which you're addressing college readiness and career readiness at an early age.
And I think the task force that you all put together are also a testament to the pipeline development and the way that we are growing our educators. I have to give a special shout out to one of my young sorors. She is a Delta woman, and she was a part of this task force. I know Dr. Garner is just a very hard worker, but to even suggest that she was mentored by her once principal, Dr. Whitty, thank you for the work that you all have done, and thank you to this administration for continuing to move up MNPS educators. We see the hard work that you're doing. We see the fruits of your labor, and we'll continue to see that. So just thank you all around. For now, I could just give them all the roses, all of them.
Quick question. Do you know if the state's going to pay for 12th grade retake again this year?
Yes, so a part of this presentation, we did not talk about this, but schools also administer the 12th grade retake options for students. So that is another kind of advocacy space because schools are not only required to administer the 11th grade year, but we're also administering again the 12th grade year in our schools.
HR update.
All right, in just a moment, you will receive an HR update from our Chief of Human Resources. He'll be providing context regarding where we have been, our current data and strategies to ensure our HR department is supporting and responding to the needs of our district. At the core of the strategies that will be shared is ensuring that we are maximizing and using effective internal and external strategies that keep our students at the core, support our talented teachers and leaders, and building our capacity as a district. So at this time, I will turn it over to Dr. Tony Majors, Chief of Human Resources, to provide us an update.
Well, good evening, Dr. Battle, Dr. Gentry, and board members. I know it's late, but there's a significant amount of information to go through. I'm going to try and get through it as quickly and as clearly as I can. The document that I just handed out to you, it does contain some client and attorney protected information. So within your document is something that you have not seen before. I believe it's been about 6 months now since my transition from student services to human resources. And as you very well know, there have been a lot of changes in the district. Today's presentation is threefold. One, to bring you up to speed on all the changes that have taken place in HR, to sort of set some context around our current reality around staffing and teacher vacancies, and also to give you a glimpse into where we're going as a department as we continue our reform efforts in HR. So I want to begin with the document from Bowen McAllister that's in the front cover of the information that I just provided to you. Again, this information is protected between you, the board, Dr. Battle and I, and our attorneys, but I do want to make sure I cover some information, but I'm not quoting anything directly from the report itself, so you're more than welcome to read it as I go through this. I believe back in May or June, Dr. Battle and I had asked permission to actually meet with the attorneys to actually gain better insight into what led into the findings. We actually met with them on 3 separate occasions. The first would be to express our desire to obtain specific information and details provided during the policy and procedural investigation. We actually wanted to review the quantitative data that they collected that led to their recommendations. And then we actually wanted to have the opportunity to present our reform efforts in the HR department and to ascertain a better understanding of how those reform efforts address their concerns. So a quick summary of our improvement efforts. 1, we established a single investigative protocol for the entire school district. We are re-implementing the McGrath investigative protocol for all investigations. We're implementing an employee relations record security and state suspension reporting procedures. We've added a compliance, or we will be adding a compliance coordinator to close the gap between school level investigations and federal and state reporting guidelines. We've established an investigative protocol and timeline for leave with and leave without pay. Define what constitutes leave without pay of 1 to 3 days. We've established a vision for focusing on customer service, professionalism, organizational development, and efficiency, departmental reorganization and action plan development and implementation, position repurposing to address organizational needs, including our employee relations office, compensation, and position control positions. We've improved communication both inside the department and with our principals and school-based leaders. We've restructured the hiring process so that our hiring managers, talent acquisition partners, and employee records resource center staff members actually work together to facilitate the hiring processes to eliminate some of the delays that we were experiencing. We developed an administrative guide to human resources, which you have a copy of. We want to make sure you had a copy, so as you receive concerns from constituents or staff members, you can actually reference that guide yourself to help point them in the right direction. That was presented to our principals this past summer when we had our Principal Leadership Institute. We also developed we will be developing a formal offer letter that goes along with the R12 and Taleo migration. One of the things that we heard is that we're making formal offers, but our teachers are not leaving with the type of information that they need. What's their salary, their work schedule, where do they report? General information so that when we make the offer, they're receiving a formal document to say they are now an employee of Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools. And we really have worked to develop a very aggressive district compensation plan, which we will talk more about a little bit later. Quick synopsis. Of course, you have the full response from Bowen McAllister in your folder. But a quick synopsis, this is in my words, not theirs, but I think if you would go to page 3, the last paragraph before the signature page, you will actually be able to read their findings. I also think on page 1, at the beginning of one of the paragraphs, it actually identifies how they feel that our response to the audit has addressed their concerns. So it is our belief meaning Dr. Battles and I, that the actions taken by the district and human resources leadership have effectively addressed the concerns expressed in the February 12, 2019 policy and practice review and recommendations conducted by Bowen McAllister. Of course, again, you can reference the document yourself to see exactly what they've said. Now, addressing our current situation. It's been very well documented, the issue around teacher vacancies in Metro Nashville Public Schools, but also teacher vacancies across the state. The next few slides, we're going to really focus on teacher recruitment and retention, and we really want to address the most pressing issues impacting our school district from an internal perspective as well as an external perspective. But I do want to frame the context of the issue. We've actually taken the time to pull data from not just MNPS, but other school districts. What you have provided is one by school districts, and these were just pulled based on the number of vacancies, highest to lowest from across the state, and the number of teachers. So you have MNPS, 5,038 teachers, 124 certified vacancies. We do have 43 vacancies for teachers that are waiting on state license. So still have 43 that are still waiting on state license. But true vacancies, we have 124 certified. We have 50 true bus driver vacancies and 46 true paraprofessional vacancies as of this afternoon. Shelby County, 6,600 teachers with 227 certified. Williamson, 70 certified. Hamilton, 48. Robertson, 35. Sumner, 33. And Rutherford County, of course, right down I-24, has 9 certified vacancies. And even though they have 3,222 teachers. We're going to come back to that and why that's important, because Rutherford County has developed some innovative approaches for teacher recruitment that we believe are helping for them to recruit not only our teachers, but teachers from other areas, and I will come back to that in a few moments. As we analyze our data, it's really important for us to understand that the landscape for public education has changed. We are no longer just competing against the other school districts around us. We're competing against every other industry in Nashville. So we have to be competitive in terms of our wages, our benefits, our compensation, and we do need to be far more aggressive in our recruitment of talent and expediting the ways in which they obtain teacher certification. When we looked at the Tennessee Department of Education's retention and hiring report from 2018-19, 483 teachers exited the state. MNPS lost 228 teachers to other school districts in the state, with 59 of our teachers going to Rutherford County, 32 going to Williamson, 29 going to Sumner. MNPS hired 118 teachers from other Tennessee school districts, with 16 coming from Rutherford, 15 going to Williamson, 13 going to Wilson, and 13 going to Sumner. So notice we're losing more than we're gaining. MNPS hired 118 teachers from our Tennessee educator prep programs, with Vanderbilt providing 30, 26 from Lipscomb, 13 from UT Knoxville, 12 from Belmont, and 10 from TSU. 517 of our teachers were hired that did not teach in Tennessee prior to 2016-17, which means we have to expand our recruitment efforts not only to all of our local teacher prep programs and alternative licensure programs. We have to really focus out of state, because we're actually recruiting talent from outside of Tennessee to work in Metro Nashville Public Schools. Going back to Rutherford County, currently they're offering an up to $5,000 signing bonus, a signing incentive for hard-to-fill positions. We do feel that is attracting some of our teachers in hard-to-staff positions into Rutherford County. So we need to be very clear that we need to be competitive as we look at and broaden our teacher recruitment efforts. So one of the things that we did focus on is position control and candidate identification. So we worked with our principals and EDSs to review our current job postings to prioritize our hiring needs. We know that there's multiple phases of the budgeting process and posting of positions. We wanted to make sure we were prioritizing exactly what our administrators needed and focusing our attention there. We went back and reviewed all eligible applicants that had applied to the school district going back to April of last year. We identified anyone that was displaced but was eligible for rehire, those that applied but had secured a position. Of course, many of the people that we contacted had already secured positions both in the district and for surrounding counties, but we did make personal phone calls to many of those. I believe Ms. Harkey, I believe her husband actually received a phone call from one of our talent acquisition partners. So we were turning over every stone that we could to find eligible candidates. So our internal strategy is really focusing on maximizing talent and resources to ensure that we have certified teachers providing direct instruction to our students. That's critical. Dr. Battle has been very, very clear. Our number one priority at this time is to make sure that our students are receiving instruction from certified staff. In order to do that, our first phase was we identified all possible teachers and parapros that are eligible for rehire in our district. We have sent that information out to our principals. They are to conclude their interviews this afternoon, beginning tomorrow. The HR team, in partnership with the EDSs, will actually come together and identify any eligible employees that were not hired and begin making placement decisions so that they will be placed in an open position in our district. The second phase is school principals in partnership will review all specialist positions currently working in our schools. We have specialists in a variety of areas, but they do not provide direct instruction. They are not the teachers of record. In order to make sure we do have certified teachers in front of our students, we are asking principals to work with their EDSs to find innovative ways to either have those specialists work part-time or full-time positions until a candidate is identified. Hopefully we can identify a candidate over the course of the year, but in the event that we cannot, we want to make sure we do have a certified staff member providing direct instruction to our students. And the third phase is really remapping of our staffing. We know that the 20-day count is coming. With the 20-day count, we will identify personnel or positions that need to be reduced or moved due to student under or over enrollment. We also want to really look at the realignment of current staffing models based on our student need. We've had some promising discussions today with Dr. Williams and Deb McAdams to really look at exceptional ed. As we looked at staffing and looked at what our student needs are, we may be able to cut some of those posted exceptional education positions because the needs don't rise to the level, but we're still satisfying the needs of the IEP, of the student's IEP. So we're looking at that information as well and identifying other opportunities to reduce some of our vacancies. One of the things that we're also doing within the HR department is really focusing on revisioning our focus and where we're really spending the majority of our energy. So we really want to focus on attracting, inspiring, and retaining talent and establishing a new vision for human resources. What you see is an early draft of how we're really aligning all of our work. We're really focused on recruitment and retention strategies, and those are the six buckets that we're sort of aligning all of our work. Focusing on total rewards, everything regarding benefits and compensation. A comprehensive talent acquisition strategy, which we'll talk about in a little while, of some of the ways we're looking at teacher recruitment. Operational efficiencies. One of the things that came out of the audit was that we did need to focus very heavily on efficiency within the department. People need to know where they need to spend the majority of their time, how do they interface with our clients, and how do they work through our systems to close the gap between identification of a potential employee and then the closing and hiring of that employee. High quality induction, onboarding, and membership. Increased pathways to licensure, which we're going to talk a little bit more about shortly, and a robust professional learning portfolio. The robust professional learning portfolio and the high-quality induction and onboarding are areas we feel are incredibly important to the future success of our school district. Right now, we have a very, very robust professional development catalog. What we have not developed are strands within that catalog focused on the actual needs of the student or the teachers. We know by our data that we lose the greatest majority of our teachers years 0 to 5. Why don't we create strands that provide the type of professional development and training and professional growth opportunities so that our 0 to 5 year teachers are really participating in professional development series that increase their success in the classroom and increase the likelihood they remain with our school district. The same goes for our veteran employees. If I've been a teacher for 12 to 15 years, I may need to revisit some new best practices in education. So a refresher or a new exposure to some professional development learning opportunities and moving beyond just leadership development. We want to grow our teachers who want to stay as teachers, but they need to grow in their capacities, their capacity to be highly effective and still provide those opportunities for leadership. And then under the organizational development and organizational development components of high-quality induction and onboarding, we want to just, again, not focus on leadership development, but really focus on organizational development, both for our certified and support employees. So I talked briefly about alternative pathways to licensure. Everyone knows that we do use these, but they don't know to what capacity. So I want to provide you with some information so you have a better idea of all the alternative licensing opportunities that exist in our school district. Of course, the National Teacher Residency Program currently has 17. The MNPS Urban Teacher Residency Program with Belmont provides 12. Lipscomb's Job Embedded Program provides 51 teachers in our school district. Vanderbilt's residency program provides 12 of the approved 20 in the RFP, so they may add others. The EdForce Support Employee Practice Preparation Program, we currently have 52 support employees enrolled in that program. Their next practice opportunity is September the 7th. Those that pass could immediately enroll in a post-secondary institution and be assigned as a teacher in one of our classrooms as a resident. So that's a great opportunity immediately. And Teach for America, we have 36 core members in this year's core and 107 alumni currently serving our school system. So we have had success with some of our alternative programs. We want to continue to explore those and expand those as appropriate. Additionally, we're looking at some internal initiatives and approaches to staffing that we think can provide benefit, even if it's not hiring a new full-time FTE. There are some other things that we can possibly do, and we've had some conversation with MEA and others, and this is one that we are exploring now. And it's the Middle and High School Job Sharing Initiative, where we'll allow our staff to teach up to 2 courses either before, during, or after school hours at a maximum cost of $9,000 per course. What that would look like is if I am a high school teacher, my high school starts at 7, I have a middle school within proximity to my high school, and they need a 4th period, or was it 6th period, 7th period for middle school? I can't remember. 6. Okay. sixth period for middle school, and I want to pick up that sixth period math course at my feeder middle school. It's within proximity. I can get there within a short amount of time. I can earn $9,000 just by picking up that one course, because that is 1/6 of the teacher's salary, and we're looking at it as an extended contract initiative. So you could do it before or after, or you could choose to give up your planning period. Now, we do have some concerns, and we're building in safeguards around this. Giving up your planning period, we don't want to do anything to increase the likelihood of teacher burnout. But if as a teacher, I could give up, let's say I'm a high school teacher, and I only want to give up my A-day planning period to teach a course, I still have the option of picking up the additional $9,000 for that course and still have the B-day planning period available as an option for me. Again, completely voluntary.
Is that a course within their own high school? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, within the day is only within your high school. And we are building in some, building in some controls around proximity to your school because of travel times, traffic issues, and everything else. And we're looking at other factors. You know, if I'm a middle school teacher and then I'm getting up early to go teach a course in the morning at the high school, does that increase my likelihood of burnout? So we want to spend a little bit more time in this area, but this is one that we feel may be a promising approach to help address some of our course offerings. Opportunities and partnership. Now, one of the things we've not had a great deal of time to talk about are all the things that are in development in human resources. And this is just a few, but I want to outline some of the things that are in the works. I've already met with the new HR director for the Tennessee Department of Education. Actually, tomorrow we're meeting with his entire team and our HR team here. And we're actually going to go through and look at all the alternative certification programs, discuss all the barriers that currently exist towards teacher licensing, and really work to develop a stronger partnership between the TDOE and MNPS to address many of these issues, but also to create some pathways so that we can mitigate some of the factors that are leading to some of our teacher issues. We are planning on meeting with Clarksville, Montgomery County, I believe next week, or within a few weeks to talk about their Grow Your Own program. They were recommended to us because they are actually starting a program of really investing through the use of title funds to offset some of the cost of obtaining a post-secondary education, and it's being considered a very promising approach, and we're really thinking about it for our teaching and learning academies. If we can incentivize our students that are in teaching and learning pathways, then that's another way to attract talent and retain it for our school system in the future. And then the last is we plan to meet with all the deans from the schools of education for our local universities. I've spoken to Dr. Boyd at Lipscomb. She is going to work with me to convene. And really, the purpose there is to reestablish our relationship, to explore other opportunities within the partnership for not just teacher recruitment, but to get us before the teachers early, look at student teaching opportunities. Where do we have residency opportunities? Are there opportunities for us to have adjunct professors hired from the universities to fill some of our hard-to-fill courses at the same rate of pay that we would a regular teacher, because they have a little bit more flexibility in their schedule. So those are things that we're considering as well. So Recruitment 2019-20. All of our post-secondary institutions have not released their recruiting schedule. For those that have, we want to provide you with an update on where we are and what we plan to focus on. One, we've already signed up for 10 recruitment fairs or events within the state. We've signed up for 21 outside of the state. We're really targeting universities and alternative education programs that have a track record of providing highly effective candidates, universities and cities where recruitment has proven to be effective. There's no need in us spending the dollars to go somewhere where we've recruited 2 people in 10 years. We want to go somewhere we've actually had some success and where Nashville is attractive. We also want to focus on our HBCUs and Hispanic serving institutions to increase the diversity of our candidate pool. We also want to look at universities who are not just serving historically minority candidates, but universities who provide diversity based on race, ethnicity, and areas of certification. So a broad gamut of teachers graduating who have broad certification. Universities that produce top educators in our hard-to-fill areas. And one thing we want to do this year, and I've already spoke to our recruiting team, while we have a recruiting team, and that does change within the department, I think we need to expand that. So we need to have rotating members within HR that are participating in recruiting, but we also need to think about who are some of our teachers or our teacher leaders who could participate and tell the story of Metro Schools. Who are some of our principals that could be there actually having face-to-face and considering early agreements and really recruiting some of our teachers in the Metro, as well as central office leaders, because there's always capacity and need for people in specialty areas as well. Things to explore and finalize. Again, I've been in HR for 6 months. We've made significant change and improvements, but there are still areas we can improve, and we're considering a lot of different things. Communication plan to target retirees, bus drivers, and teacher candidates who may not have applied to MNPS. This is something we're hoping to actually start rolling out next week. So another phase of communication of if you would like to be an MNPS employee, these are areas where we need your services. Professional growth and training opportunities for our HR staff. If we want our HR staff to be HR professionals, they need to be trained on how to be HR professionals. So we're looking at professional affiliations and training for them as well. Internal communication portal for our HR department. One of the first things I did within the first month of transitioning is I had skip meetings with my entire department. That means I met with the department members without their boss present and asked them to be very transparent. Tell me what your challenges are. What are the areas where you would like to see improvement? Internal communication was a recurring theme. They didn't know what was happening, what was the priority, and what was the vision within the department. That's an area that we can do things with, both through the use of technology, but also through regular meetings and communication. The development of a branded teacher recruitment initiative. Now, I know that there's been something like this in Nashville before, but there are other cities that have a citywide branded strategy. Teach 615, I don't think that's ours, but Teach something else. But
901.
901, there we go, Teach Memphis. But we need one for Nashville, and it just does not need to live within MNPS. It needs to be promoted through a lot of our other organizations, local sports teams, the chamber. We need to get the word out that MNPS is looking for talent, for quality educators to come to Metro Nashville Public Schools. Modernize our recruitment portfolio, materials, videos, agreements, incentives, and an HR service center. If HR is the face of the district, we want to make sure that's an appealing face that looks modernized in 21st century. Incentive and recruitment pay options. This is not something that's new for Metro Nashville Public Schools. The previous administration did utilize some degree of incentive pay. We have a school district competing with us right now utilizing incentive pay. And it does not have to be reserved to just schools of innovation and priority schools. Incentive pay can be used for relocation expenses. It can be used for teacher recruitment. And if we want to have the conversation on incentives for performance, that's a conversation that we can have. A longevity pay expansion plan. How do we look at longevity pay as a benefit to keep our employees who may choose to leave the district as mid-year or mid-career professionals? Additions to the employee benefits program, how do we strengthen it? We just added the fertility benefit that has been very, very well received. How do we look at other benefits that benefits our families and our employees in the future? And improving staff retention rates by training school and central office administrators on best practices and proven strategies. Teachers stay with leadership. Teachers leave leadership. We need to help our leaders understand how do we implement those types of best practices to retain our teachers longer and keep them in our school district. So our ask, Dr. Gentry several years ago was very clear. Tell me what you want of us. So this is what I want of you. One, we all need to, we all understand, employee recruitment and retention is extremely complex. Our ask is one, for you to continue your advocacy. Engage with the Tennessee State Board of Education, and there's two particular asks for MNPS. We need to identify innovative ways to increase the number of Tennessee licensed educators while reducing the barriers towards that certification. The other specific ask is designate MNPS as its own education prep provider. We were denied this on our last round, even though it was not in policy. If we could certify our own teachers, we could work with the state to identify what those requirements were, and we could become our own EPP. Policy. Work with district leadership to ensure that our policies align with 21st century educational trends and best practices. If we have antiquated practices, then we need to remove those practices and update them. So it's a deep dive into policy. And budget. Identify a date to review the district's compensation plan proposal. I know that many of you have asked for it. We've been unsuccessful in scheduling a time, but it's always budget season in Metro Nashville Public Schools. And if we're going to make a huge shift in compensation, I think you probably want to see this plan as early as possible. That concludes my presentation.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you a question. So have you guys set out measurable goals for recruitment, retention, for diversity, for?
We have started that work. We have not gotten to the point of really identifying the measurable goals in those spaces. One shift that we made, and we haven't put it into a formal document yet, we had an exercise of looking at our district KPIs. Of course, we added math this year, as you all very well know. The one thing that HR struggled with is there was not a direct correlation between the district KPIs and our day-to-day work. So what we began with is taking the KPIs and drilling them down to what are the things that can be done within the HR world that positively impact the district's desire to move in a positive direction around those KPIs. And we came up with some meaningful strategies. No, we have not had the time to finish that work because right about the time we were doing that, we shifted right into full-blown hire everybody we can find that's eligible to work in Metro Nashville Public Schools. So no, we have not. We know it's on our radar, but we haven't done it yet.
You guys use the State Board of Ed puts out a teacher prep report card. So they rate every teacher prep program in Tennessee, alternative and traditional, on a range of metrics. And so I'm just wondering if you're targeting your recruitment to the highest rated teacher
We are
prep
targeting our
programs.
recruitment not just to our highest rated providers. We are actually drilling that even further, looking at numbers of providers, numbers of graduates, where those graduates are historically going, and we have it for every institution in the state and for many of our institutions in surrounding states. So we are actually doing a deep data analysis. Ms. Tyus, who really is leading our recruitment effort, she has really taken a strong look into that space and is providing that to our leadership team as we're finalizing our recruitment schedule.
So my last question is, do you know if Ms. Tyus and her team are looking at a strategy like a recruitment fair, and how many do they get out of that versus a Facebook ad, and how many they get out of that? So what are your high yield strategies?
Our high yield strategies are, I don't know the numbers in my head, so I'm not going to speak out of turn.
Yeah.
What I can say is we have had this conversation. Of course, we have had real success with face-to-face fairs. Now, I personally feel there's less success when we're one of 100 and it's pick a booth to stop by. I want to be a little bit more strategic, and she and I have had the conversation of identifying those universities where we have historically had success, where they've provided high-performing educators that meet some of our other needs around diversity and race, ethnicity, and subject area. And then how about us just being on campus? How about we go in with early agreements, where it's not just a recruitment fair, it's we're actually going in with a defined idea of how many people we'd like to offer jobs to, and the timing to do that. So those are some things we are discussing. In terms of Facebook and everything else, I don't know that information. I will say that we significantly need to modernize our use of social media and electronic opportunities to recruit teachers. I just don't think we do that very well at this present time.
I know Nashville Teacher Residency they get the majority of their applicants from Facebook.
Now, I will tell you, we have already met with TFA and I've met with them several times now, and had a very promising conversation around our MOU with TFA actually says we can hire up to 75. We only hired 36 last year. The biggest barrier there being timing of when we began the process of really recruiting talent for MNPS. We have already started laying out some strategic timelines in terms of when we're going to come back together and finalize what's our recruitment strategy, what are our highest areas of need, establish early in the process for national TFA candidates actually come to Nashville for an MNPS TFA recruitment opportunity just for us, looking at both online interviews, Skype, whatever we're using, those types of processes, and then trying to hire them early. So it's actually trying to hire as many of our TFAs before the end of January as possible, because TFAs have proven to be extremely aggressive, that if they go through the process and they know they're eligible entering into January, that they're more aggressive about actually trying to hire, to actually sign an agreement. So if we can sign as many of those in January as possible, then we're ahead of other districts. And last year we were behind.
So to Ms. Walker's question about what are the sources, whether it's Facebook, or is there not a question on the application, like how did you hear about this, or how did you find out about this posting? And if it's not there, is that something that we could just add? Because I think that's the easiest way to track. If I'm online applying for a position, I found this position, I heard about this on Facebook or a recruitment fair, something like that.
I'm going to have to ask the team that one.
And you may,
There she is. You can just answer.
you can just say right there.
Okay.
Awesome.
Gotcha, thank you.
It's funny, we actually read something in preparation for tonight that your number one recruiter is your current staff.
Thank you. Tony, thank you for this information. I would just ask that if we have documents like this in the future, if we could get them to the board earlier, because this is a lot of information. And again, we haven't seen the PowerPoint before. So if we have that information before, I think board members could be more prepared. We had the Bone McAllister report that was completed that we paid $100,000 for. And there were about 19 recommendations out of that. One of them was to adhere to the salary schedule. Where are we in that process?
Time to go.
Okay.
Can't answer. It's done.
So, I have to remind you that this is attorney-client protected information, so being very specific, I might have to work with Corey on that. All of that is actually going to be answered in the compensation plan whenever we get it scheduled. Every aspect of pay equity, employees and positions being outside of the salary schedule, it's all covered in the compensation schedule, in the compensation plan that I'm ready to bring forward.
When are we going to get an answer to this question? This has been a question that's been in the paper. A lot of this has been public information. I'm asking a simple question. When am I going to get an answer?
It was my ask whenever y'all schedule it. I'm ready.
Yeah, so we had a retreat. We had several members that were not able to attend. They were prepared then. So we just need to reschedule a retreat time so that they can bring it. It's a hefty report. We need more than board time to do it. I've really asked for it to be a little bit more interactive, so they give it to us in bites, and we discuss each piece of it, but we want to do that. And so we'll have to find another date in September to come together so we can get that information.
And when you talk about TFA, it scares me, because that is not a strategy that we can depend on. Those TFA teachers don't stay with us. A few of them have, but not many of them have stayed with us in the long term. So if we think that's going to solve our problems, it might be a short-term Band-Aid, but that's it. So that really scares me. And what I understand from talking to other districts is that they have these fairs, these recruitment fairs at colleges and universities throughout the U.S., and that people, seniors in college, would love to come to Nashville. And because they've got all of our surrounding counties, they're getting those folks. And they'll say, Nashville's not here. I would like to go to Nashville. And these surrounding counties are saying, hey, we're only so far from Nashville. So we are missing a wonderful opportunity to get not only people locally, but across the nation. And what I understand from these other counties is that they don't go out and hire a bunch of recruiters. They cross-train, like was recommended here, in order to train central office folks to go out and recruit. And they compete. Oh, look here, I came back with 5 contracts. Oh, well, our team came back with 10 contracts. So there's this whole, it's like budget season. Recruitment starts in January, and it's the whole central office that is working on this. And I think that, I don't know if you don't seem to be paying attention to me, but I think that there's some ways we can recruit these teachers right out of college to come to the IT city and offer them, an opportunity to work in Nashville. So I would like to know if you're interested in that.
Yeah, and actually what I was looking at, I want to go back to the slide to reference exactly what you were just speaking of. This slide actually highlights where we're getting our teachers from. We only hired 118 of our teachers from Tennessee teacher prep programs. A large percentage of our current hires are from out of state. We're already hitting a lot of those recruitment fairs and everything nationally. Now, I will tell you, I don't think that we invest as heavily enough in our recruitment budget. Now, I get to do the budget next year, so that'll be part of the budget process. But there is not a heavy investment in recruitment in our human resources budget. The other thing is we're not contracting with anybody for recruiting. We're doing it within the HR department, and in the slide we talked about, we're actually going to expand it to central office principals and teachers as part of our recruitment team. And one of the other recommendations was that we actually want to train our employees on best practices regarding education and retention, recruitment and retention. So all of those are actually the things that I'm actually proposing to do.
Okay, so are you saying that we did last year?
Yes.
Actually go out and recruit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where did we go and how many people did we send?
Now, actually, I think Ms.
Get that
Titus has a
information for us?
comprehensive report of all of that, of all the places we went last year, and how many we were able to hire from those. So I can actually
Yes,
forward that
that'd
to
be
you.
helpful.
So we have that from last year, and I already gave you a quick synopsis of everywhere we've already identified and registered to go for this year, plus the fact that we'll be adding more for this year, not including, and I will say, and I do want to say this because this came up this summer, TFA is a part of a teacher recruitment strategy. It's not the teacher recruitment strategy. Our data shows that our TFA candidates actually remain with the district longer and actually have achieved very high performance results. So when our current situation where we're still sitting with vacancies, we have to exhaust every possible opportunity to put certified teachers in our classrooms. TFA are just one. Our local university teacher prep programs are where we're still leveraging the majority of our work. Alternative pathways to licensure, which is one of the reasons it was one of our recommendations, is how do we attract working professionals who may have intended to go into another career field into education, particularly in math, engineering, accounting, all those other fields where there's a heavy emphasis on math, but we're not able to get those for various reasons. Now, one thing I did not cover in this presentation, and I'm sorry if we're getting way deep into the weeds now, but one thing I did not say is we're also having conversations with other local components of Metro government and looking at incentives. You know, we talked about recruitment incentives, but there are all kind of opportunities that are out there. So I've started meeting and having some conversation. Are there housing assistance? You know, we have an affordable housing commission in Metro government that's looking at that for home purchases. What are the options for rental properties? Are there some special agreements that can be entered into for MNPS teachers that are moving to the city? Are we willing to pay relocation expenses for those that are moving from out of state? All these options are on the table. I'm just giving you a quick glimpse into what we're thinking and where we're going. But part of the budget process is I'm going to come back with specific asks around these areas. And prior to doing that, we will actually be having a conversation around what do we think our high yield strategies will be.
Oh, and when you come back with that information, I'd like to have specifics on when you will start, and maybe the planning has already begun, but when you will start going out to these different universities around the country, and how many people will go, how many teams will go, how many people on a team. I'd like to have that kind of information. What universities are we planning to visit? Exactly when? Is that January? Is that February? We know that the best teachers, the highest, just like you were talking about the TFAers, those folks we get our best teachers if we recruit in January. So if we wait until March and April, those folks have already been taken.
Our recruitment schedule is already done. I believe our first recruitment visit is September 21st.
Okay, great. So yeah, when you have that information, if you would send that to us.
I can send it to you now to understand it's in draft format.
And Tony, how many employees do you have in HR?
Oops, I'm sorry, September 11th.
And where are you going September 11th? And how many universities will you visit in Louisiana? I'm sorry, I can't understand. Okay. So is this part of a recruitment fair, or is this going to a university to talk to? I'm not sure how that happens.
Some are
because I know
fairs, some are one-to-one visits, and actually, we will go ahead and give you, just understand, when we give it to you, it's in draft format. All universities have not scheduled their recruitment dates. We will give you, I will email it out tomorrow, and you will have all of that. It says exactly where we're going, the universities that will be there, and what our primary focus areas are. We've had that for a while now.
Great. And will there be some cross-training of personnel in central office so that they will be part of the teams that go on these visits?
The initial plan is, depending on the size of the fair, have a minimum of a 3-man team for large multi-campus fairs, and the 3-man team would be inclusive of a recruitment coordinator or talent acquisition partner, an HR member, and or a teacher, principal, or central office staff member, depending on what the focus of that recruitment visit is.
Great, great. And did you tell me how many employees you have in HR right now?
That's a good question. I'd have to actually go in and count. I want to say it's around 60 total.
60?
Well, I know I'd still have to go count them.
Is that inclusive of everyone that's in your department?
Yes.
That's inclusive of everyone?
You have an org chart, and that was handed out with you with the Bone McAllister.
So
I just don't know the number off the top of my head. That's inclusive of everybody.
Okay. So it's about 60, and this form is includes everyone that works for
That
you.
includes every position that was approved through this past year's budget cycle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I want to say that I appreciated you. Sorry, you have to come back now, Dr. Majors. I appreciated you reminding us, as you said, that TFA is a part of a multi-strategy process that you have, as well as visiting many different kinds of universities. And you had a slide, and I'm sorry, I don't know what the number was, of the different universities and types of universities and teachers that you are searching for. Do you already have those? It's not, yes, that's it. Thank you. Do you already have those universities identified, or is that part of the ongoing strategy that you're still working to kind of tidy up?
Most have already been identified. Some of those have not released their recruitment fair schedule, however. And depending on where we go, let's just prime example, an HBCU or an HSI. There may be one area that has both. And let's say you have 2 HBCUs, 1 HSI, a couple junior colleges, and let's just say an SEC type school. That may be a large recruitment fair. So we'll be capturing those, but we will be intentional about going to the HSI and HBCUs when we're targeting minority applicants particularly.
Okay. Then I guess I have a couple other follow-up questions. I'm sorry you still can't sit down. That's me. So with those recruitment fairs, I know that you also stated, and then you reminded us again, that there's going to be different types of staff, whether they're teachers, principals, and central office staff, that we're hoping you're cross-trained to better, in essence, sell MNPS as this is the place you want to work. You don't want to work close to Nashville. You want to work in Nashville. You want to work with the best. So do we have a process already, or those people already identified of who we want to cross-train, or is that also something we're still working on?
I think that's more of an internal process right now with Ms. Titus and her team of just Tias and her team and just some of the standard recruitment, things that we're doing. Okay. That was one of the areas where I actually said, I want to go back and continue to work with what are the best practices to begin doing more of that training. I'm actually looking at engaging in a training opportunity, I believe it's in October, that's purely focused on building internal capacity around teacher recruitment and retention to bring those talents back so that then we can begin training others. So it's both. It's in process because we've been doing teacher recruitment for years and we have some very talented recruiters in HR. And how do we take it to another level?
Okay. The EPB that was denied, are we still able to try for that again?
Now, that was denied based on us being a level 1 district at the time. Okay. So I don't know if that would be a criteria for resubmission, if we have to start all over again, or if it's just an ask. But we're actually meeting with the TDOE tomorrow, and that will be one of our conversations.
Okay. All right. Other than that, I'm glad to hear that you're going to CMCSS, as I've heard of that same program, and I actually was hired there through a recruitment fair. So,
good.
You answered all the questions that I was going to ask. You all are extremely thorough. I mean, the biggest takeaway that I want the community to have is that staffing a 6,000 person school district is hard. So, yeah, I ain't got nothing else. Thank you.
I do have a couple of questions, and Mr. Misroga, I'll come to you. Just quickly, when we're thinking about recruitment teams, do we ever consider bringing any of our student ambassadors? I mean, I know that we have all been amazingly impressed by how they have articulated the impact that our programs have had on them, which is ultimately what we would hope someone is coming to this district to do, right? And so I think that, have we considered that, and especially if we have any recruitment opportunities during the summer, and do we have data that allows us to know that when you get to Xavier University, located at 1 Drexel Drive, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70113, that you actually have students from the district that are enrolled there?
So that has come up, and I'll just be completely honest with you. The concern there is the out-of-state travel with our students and the policies surrounding that.
We just told you we're not going to vote on it. We talked about this last time, so take them on.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
But we have used them at local fairs for sure.
Okay.
Say locally it's less of a challenge. It's something that we can actually go back and take a deeper look at.
Well, I mean, even if we can just say, I know that when I get to this school, I've got 4 MNPS students, former MNPS students that are there. If we can contact them and just say, hey, can you come to the fair and help talk about your experience?
Now, that is a strategy we have talked about, and it's not just that former MNPS students that are enrolled at the school. It's current MNPS employees that were graduates of the school that have connections with the staff.
Yeah,
so we are having those conversations as well as how to incorporate that into our recruiting profile.
Ms. Rowe?
So I'm glad to see this comprehensive plan that you're presenting. I guess this is more of a comment, but I've really grieved over the last couple of years the loss of some of our veteran teachers. And I know just my own 2 children, we lost probably 5 of their very best rock star teachers. And a couple of them just quit the teaching profession, but others went over to other districts. And so when I anecdotally am hearing about issues with teachers, I hear a lot about retention at mid-years, and I know that most teachers leave in the early years, and so we have to always focus on recruitment there and incentives in that area, but I also really would like to see us have a heavy focus on keeping these excellent teachers. And I think the problems are multifaceted. I think, pay is part of it, but that may even be the least for some of these veteran teachers who are really committed and consider teaching a calling. I do think that there are a lot of complaints about the salary schedule, possible gaps. I'd love to have a deep dive in that, at a retreat or somewhere where we can talk more about the specifics of the pay scale. But I know there are concerns about the pay scale. The fact that we have just stopped giving step raises, we just have to get that back for the teachers to, it's a respectful thing to do. Everyone else gets a step increase. And I think the discipline policy has been part of it, and I know that we're trying to revise some of those practices. And then just the culture problems that were identified in the HR report. So I think it's just a multifaceted problem for the veteran teachers who are very experienced. But so that's my comment. I guess my question is, you talked about incentives, and you talked about, moving costs and things like that. Are we looking at incentives for these mid-career teachers and the veteran teachers that we have? And
so I was giving you a glimpse into the issues, the areas that we're already paying attention to. Of course, there is a affordable housing or a home purchase initiative that's taking place now for Metro government employees. We will be a part of that work. In terms of other incentives, I think there are always internal leadership, and I wasn't planning on talking about this because I haven't even mentioned it to my team yet, but there's also the opportunity of how do you incentivize professional growth and development as an established career professional. Can there be, as I mentioned, theming and branding within our professional development series? Is there an opportunity to incentivize completion of X number of internal credit hours or things of that nature? So we can look at all that. But to your point about the salary schedule and all that, and it's going to be very brief, all that's going to be covered in the compensation schedule proposal when I bring it forth. The issue that MEA has brought forth, and I've already met with MEA, is that the fact that the compression of not receiving STEP and COLA for several years compressed the middle of the salary schedule. That impacts our veteran employees. The compensation schedule seeks to correct all of that. And I just presented to you, and I feel that I thought it was thorough enough, that We have effectively addressed the issues in the audit report, and we're really looking at moving forward and improving everything that we do within human resources and how we support this school system.
One last comment. You did mention, I think, the possibility of merit pay or pay based on performance, maybe. But just wanted to say that I think there are a lot of studies showing that tying the pay to test scores is not an effective solution. So maybe you're talking about other types of compensation in that area, but I just want to throw my 2 cents. I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yeah, that's not really what I was proposing. That was more or less just saying these are things that were out there. And we're going to actually, like I said, that'll be part of our conversation as we talk about, you know, the direction we want to go as a district.
I just want to, I see David Hines is in the back, and I just want to recognize him. David Hines and the trust has been a major focus of ways to keep our teachers. And I ran into a teacher recently, and she said that she was wanting to leave. I guess it was about 6 months ago. She said she was wanting to leave the district, but her husband said, "What would we do without the clinics?" So they talked about it, and she decided they would stay another year because of how much they love the work that David Hines has done with our clinics and our trust. So, David, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, not yet. You knew I was coming, right? So we talk about recruitment and retention for our teachers. Excellent. We still got a lot of work to do, of course. Now let's talk about our bus drivers. I have lost 3 bus drivers in my district. I have kids waiting on the bus stop longer than they should. We know that we have a shortage. 2 of our bus drivers turned in their keys. They didn't even give a 2-week notice. They finished their routes and said, "I'm done." We do have one that did give a 2-week notice, and I have charged Mr. Lee on finding out why, so we can retain that bus driver if we can. So we need to talk about retention and job fairs for bus drivers, because what I do see on the back of the buses, we're hiring, so contact us at this number. What are we doing about job fairs for bus drivers? Because that is critical. We have to get our kids to school and back home, of course, safely, and we want to make sure that we are supporting our bus drivers. That means incentives for them too. So we need to figure out some ways that we're going to make sure that they're inclusive in this operation, because it's very important. I'm not happy that we're losing bus drivers. If we are short 50, so now we're short a little bit more. So I need to hear what we're going to be doing about bus drivers.
So you heard a little bit about that when we talked about rolling out a new communications plan, prioritizing bus drivers, teachers, and paraprofessionals. So I'll be working with the communications office with that. To be honest with you, we've got to spend more time with Ken Starks and Mr. Lee and their team to really identify the best strategies for support employee recruitment. I do think you mentioned some of the most simple things. How do we utilize signage, both on our buses and community-based signage, to attract the employees? Also communicating the benefit. You know, MNPS is already doing something incredible as it relates to transportation, in that while our bus drivers don't drive an 8-hour day, they're actually paid on an 8-hour day. And I believe Mr. Henson has the actual numbers that with the 3% salary raise or increase that's proposed in January, that our bus drivers would actually be closer to the $15 mark, if not over the $15 mark, which is, you know, really good pay. But we need to communicate the benefit. We also need to understand that there is a lag in the time that you actually identify, particularly a bus driver, and when they're eligible to drive, because of all the training and certification components. It is a space that I will personally say I have not spent as much time as I need to in focusing on the support employee recruitment, with a heavy focus on the certified. But we will be working with Ken Starks and his team to actually come up with a strategy, even if it's just a bus driver recruitment fair, an ongoing recruitment effort. I wish I had a more concrete answer for you, but I'll just be completely honest with you, I don't at this time.
No, it's okay. And it actually just basically gives me confirmation on why we're losing them, because they're left out there without the support. So that's what we need to focus on. They're just as important, because we have got to make sure that we retain our bus drivers. Because if we have 10 to leave tomorrow, guess what? We're in a big pickle. And we got to make sure that is a priority, because that's not acceptable to me. And I don't know, we haven't even focused on this, and we're losing them. So, and $15 an hour, I'm going to be honest with you, I have had conversation with bus drivers, and they feel like that's not even enough pay. So they feel like they're underpaid. What is the average pay for the surrounding counties for bus drivers? Do you know?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
If you can give me that information, that'd be great. And also, I would like to get a comprehensive plan on how we're going to retain our bus drivers and what will be the next steps.
And I'll have to work.
And recruiting.
I'll have to work with the transportation office, particularly on the bus driver side. And I will say this again, the issue around market competitiveness, both locally and nationally around bus drivers, is also covered in the compensation plan that we'll be presenting to you.
We need to be talking about retention and
we can talk about it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I want to focus on. I understand we're going to talk about all that, but I'm talking about right now because we're losing bus drivers and teachers in the beginning of our school year. So we got a problem. So we just want to get that fixed. So I'm going to charge you with that. I want to know some type of comprehensive plan, how we're going to move that needle, because it's very important because these students need to make sure we have stability as far as their transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent,
Thank
excellent
you.
work, guys.
Thank you.
Excellent work. I definitely appreciate it. Looking forward to our retreat time. We'll now go into announcements, and I got a sixth grader with a project that's due. So let's go. Ms. Bush.
No announcements.
All right, Ms. Beard.
Yes, thank you. The band director at Hunters Lane High School's name is Mr. William Brooks, and for the last 5 years or so, 100% of his seniors have received scholarships to college. And Mr. Brooks was honored Saturday by receiving the Murfreesboro NAACP Freedom Fund Man of the Year Award. So I want to say congratulations to Mr. William Brooks. Secondly, 2 weeks ago, I was out with cataract surgery, and tonight Anna Shepard is out with cataract surgery. So I just wanted to wish her the best in her recovery.
Okay. I would like to say that I too have heard a lot from constituents about bus drivers and just the need of them. So I think my announcement is going to be what I tell our constituents, that I find it really aggravating as well, and it's frustrating, and it's something that we're working on. But if you know somebody that can be a bus driver, we really need those people. Please let us know who those people would be. I can't remember the numbers either of the number of people that apply and then kind of have to work through to actually be available and able to drive a bus. But if you have someone that would be a great fit for us at MNPS, just like our budget season is year-round, so is our recruitment and retention budgets and efforts that we should have. So it's on us as a board to also do some of that work. And so if you have someone, please send them to us. We would love to have them.
I have two shout outs. One is to Warner Arts Magnet, that not only is a neighborhood school that is has earned a level 5 in growth, but they have earned an overall level 4 score. They met the requirements to be dubbed a reward school, but they cannot be both a priority school and a reward school at the same time. That just means that even though over the past 3 years they had been in the bottom 5% of the state's performance list rating, they met the necessary both academic and growth scores or measurements to be moved up. So we are hoping to see them earn reward status next year. And I do want to give both them and the Nashville Chamber Report Card Committee a special shout out, because I once again had to tote my 17-month-old son with me today, and everyone was so receptive and so sweet and so nice. If you ever have a chance to go visit Warner or any of our MSAP schools, that's the Magnet School Assistance Program, where we've infused arts, STEM, STEAM, then it's a treat. I mean, just the way that they have maximized their funding and maximized the usage of and training of their employees and staff. I cannot sing their praises enough. Thank you to Principal Gibbs and his incredible staff. Secondly, I want to send a special shout out to Pearl Cone, because, oh my goodness, Pearl Cone has been a hidden gem for years. I'm not going to stare you down, Dr. Stewart, but I appreciate all the work that you poured, all the love you poured into Pearl Cone. And then I have to give a shout out to Ms. Harrington, who is the new principal, who has continued, improving and just empowering that legacy. I love it, love it, love it. If you don't know the story of Pearl Cone, it was muddied for a bit in the media. They were suggesting that there was a teacher shortage and no one was worried about it, but that was not the case. They were projected for 530 students this year, because I think they had 525 at the end of last year. They began the first day with 670 students. that means that they had an increase of 150 students. I don't know if you understand how big of a deal that is. That's incredible that they were able to market their level 5 growth, that they were able to market the good things happening in their neighborhood school, and I just cannot express enough how excited and happy we are for them, and we are looking for all the different ways we can support them until we have certificated teachers in the classroom every day. But they are continuing to do good work. Those teachers, I've been over there to visit them, have been, they've been, even though they've had to double up classrooms, they are doing it very graciously with a smile on their face. So we appreciate all the work that Pearl-Cohn, both past and present administration, is doing, and that the community is wrapping their arms around. Choose Pearl-Cohn.
I just want to give a big shout out to the EL office. They have had an unprecedented number of students arrive this year in the first 3 weeks, and they have all hands on deck and done amazing work welcoming those students and families, and so all of the schools receiving them as well. So big shout out to everybody that helped with that.
I would just like to congratulate Middle College High for making the rewards list this year. I inadvertently left them out my announcement last time, but we're proud of the growth that they have achieved this year. Thank you. There being no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Oh, now.
Good luck with homework, Sharon.
Oh, my God, this project is killing me.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.